All right, welcome everyone. Today we're gonna be doing a different stream. I wanted to create an actual resource for people who are new to the deck, who want to learn more about the deck, and all the stuff that I found online was some of the stuff was pretty good in production value and stuff, but the information was actually very lackluster. This is one of the deepest decks in the format, and I don't say that lightly. This deck just has insane amounts of play, and all the it's just really annoying that all this stuff is like, yeah, Amulet is a combo deck that it combos, you combo with Amulet and Primetime and then you win. It's just like, yes, but no. There's just so much more to it. And so I wanted to create that so newer players have access to it. They can get more information. They understand like the key interactions that the deck has, as well as all the things that you can do. Um, so that's what today is going to be about. If anybody has any questions, you can ask them on chat. I will also upload this video to YouTube, and anybody that has any questions, of course, leave comments on YouTube. I always welcome them, and I try to stay on top of it, and I try to answer them and everything. But yeah. So what is Amulet Titan? First of all, this is not a combo deck. Mistake number one that every single guide in the internet says, that is just flat out wrong. That's just people who have never played the deck, who just got beat by Amulet into Titan and then they died. Amulet is not a combo deck. I'll say it again. It's not a combo deck. It's a toolbox deck. It's just like same thing as Pod used to be, even towards the end of Pod's existence before the bannings. The deck is not. It didn't even have a combo at all. It was just simply a good toolbox deck that had like outs to every single situation, and that was why it was so powerful. I have been playing this deck for whenever Pro Tour Born of the Gods was. I saw Matthias Hand playing it on camera, and I instantly fell in love with the deck. And like, I bought all the parts, and the week after I was playing the deck. It was way more of a combo deck back then. Even still, it wasn't really a combo deck, but it definitely felt way more of a combo deck back then, before the banning of Summer Bloom, than it does right now. Right now, I think that saying this is a combo deck is just flat out wrong. This is a toolbox deck, a toolbox ramp deck with a combo finish. Okay, you do have a little bit of a combo aspect, but that's not the main, the main goal of the deck. In fact, I always say that the deck is commonly called Amulet. Everybody calls the deck Amulet. The deck should not be called Amulet. Unlike any other deck that has the name of a card in its name, something like KCI or Ad Nauseam, you literally do not need Amulet to work. You do not need Amulet of Vigor to be in play in order to win the game. In fact, you win way more games without an Amulet in play than with an Amulet in play. I don't know if way more, but like, you win probably the same amount. The key card of this deck is right here. Primeval Titan. This is what the deck wants to do. The deck wants to ramp up to 6 mana and cast a Primeval Titan. That's when the deck starts. Okay? You want to make it to 6 mana, then cast a Primeval Titan. Amulet is here because it's a very effective way to ramp when we use... let me put them over here on the side. When we use the bounce lands from original Ravnica, we have a total of 9 bounce lands. All of this say that whenever this comes into play, it comes into play tapped. Hi Adi, this one, thanks for being here. When these come into play, they tap for 2 mana, as you can see in the bottom. And when it comes into play, it comes into play tapped. and it requires you to return a land to your hand. Not any other land, any land. So you can return the bounce land themselves. Now, because of how Amulet of Vigor is worded, it means that the land, or like anything, literally any permanent. This actually goes for any permanent. I'll explain how that can be relevant later on. But this is mostly, we're going to use it mostly in the form of playing lands. Okay, we have a lot of lands that enter the battlefield tapped. Soteria West, Colony Garden, Vesuva. And basically what happens is when they come into play, the Amulet trigger goes on the stack and the bounce land trigger go on the stack. Okay, so both triggers go on the stack. You will choose to order them so the Amulet trigger goes on the stack last, which means that it will be the first one to resolve. This is a nice thing about playing this deck in Magic Online. It's very visual and it really helps you understand everything that's going on, okay? So you want to put the trigger from the bounce land on the stack first, which means that it's going to be the last one to resolve, and then you put the Amulet trigger on the stack, okay? Then the Amulet trigger resolves, you gain priority again, and in that moment when you have priority, the land is going to be untapped, okay, after the Amulet trigger resolved. And what that does is that allows you to tap whichever land you play for 2 mana in this case, okay? And then you can bounce any other land, or you can bounce the land itself to your hand. Now, the way we ramp is going to be with ways to play extra lands on each one of our turns, okay? In this category, we have Sakura Tribe Scout plays 1 extra land. Asuza, we get to play 2 extra lands. And Explore, which allows you to play 1 extra land as well. Okay, these are our ramp cards. Although Amulet should probably still be here, though Amulet ramps us in a different way. So what we do is we have an Asuza in play, for example. Okay, we play bounce land. Amulet trigger goes on the stack. We tap the bounce land for 2 mana. We return the bounce land itself to our hand. Okay. Now we have used one of our land drops. We have two land drops remaining, and now we have the bounce land still in our hand. Okay. We repeat these 2 more times, meaning that we will end up with 6 mana, and 6 mana is enough to cast this fella right here. Okay. When we cast Primeval Titan, that's when everything goes crazy. Now, this is like easy mode, okay? This is, most games don't really play out this way because your opponent will interact with you in some way, okay? So this is not the way most games play out. They will either kill your Asuza, discard your Amulet, counter something, blah, 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 blah. So, how we get to the point where we resolve the Primeval Titan, and if we get to resolve, meaning we need to survive, like against like aggro decks like Burn or Sue or whatever, they might kill us before we get to that point. So that's when all the play from the deck really comes from. Now, I'm gonna do this, part by part. So I will keep explaining how the ideal situation goes, So we have an Amulet in play. We play the Gruul Turf 3 times. We play Asuza. Okay, and now we have 3 land drops or whatever, and then we finally cast Primeval Titan. Okay, so we cast Primeval Titan and we have an Amulet in play. So far so good. Now, Primeval Titan's trigger goes on the stack. We get 2 lands. Let's say our opponent is playing Burn or something. Usually if your opponent is playing Burn and it's game 1, they can't really stop you, okay? So probably what you will do is you will get Boros Garrison and Slayer's Stronghold, okay? Both of these will come into play tapped because Primeval Titan puts these lands on the battlefield tapped. So both of these come into play tapped. Amulet trigger will go on the stack. You do the same thing you did earlier, okay? You put the bounce land trigger on the stack first, then you put the Amulet trigger. And what Slayer's Stronghold does is it gives +2/+0 Vigilance and Haste to target creature if you tap red and white. And Boros Garrison conveniently taps for exactly red and white. Okay? So this works beautifully. Okay, we haste our Primeval Titan. We bounce any land, doesn't matter. Now we can go to combat, and Primeval Titan can attack the turn it actually came into play. What this means is that we get 2 Primeval Titan triggers, getting a total of 4 lands on the turn we play it. Okay? Now, as you will see, we have a ton of utility lands. We have all of this right here. Well, I guess Stronghold also qualifies. Plus a Vesuva. Okay, so we have Colony Garden, enters the battlefield tapped, and when it comes into play, you put a 0/1 plant token creature into play. It also taps for green. This is amazing to buy time against against creature decks. So you can like champ block Hollow Ones, Gorm Regulars, etc. And it's really nice the fact that it's actually a 0/1 because you can attack through Ensnaring Bridge, and then you can use this to buff the plant token, which is pretty hilarious. And I have I have won quite a bit of matches with this interaction. It's pretty funny. Radium Fountain, pretty straightforward. You gain 2 life. Amazing against aggro decks, especially burn. It's really, really good against burn. And this, Bojuku Bog, okay. This is, it exiles a graveyard. Amazing against Dredge, pretty good against KCI, Storm, etc. Any kind of deck that uses the graveyard. Also very good at making Tarmogoyfs smaller. Ghost Squatter, great against Tron, great against Manlands. It's pretty good against stuff like Infect or the new Hardened Scales deck. Ghost Squatter is actually very, very good at preventing you from dying to like Igmoths and stuff. And then we have Sunhome Fortress of the Legion. Okay, we tap 4 mana, again red and white, and we give double strike to target creature. This works very nicely with Primeval Titan, but you can also randomly be effective with these critters as well. This is the key card that lets... this is, I think, where the most powerful thing you can do comes from. Tolaria West, okay? It comes into the battlefield tapped, it taps for blue, and it has Transmute for 3. Yeah, Halimar Depths was sometimes played. I was never a big fan. I always prefer Temple of Mystery over Halimar Depths, but it's also a possibility, of course. Now, Tolaria West. We can transmute when Tolaria West is in our hand, and we can discard it in order to find anything with cost 0. Okay, it has to be exactly 0. Okay, it cannot be 1, nothing. It needs to be 0. Okay. Fortunately, all of this stuff costs 0, as well as these 2 guys right here. So when I talked earlier, I said Amulet is a toolbox deck more than a combo deck. This is exactly what I mean. We have different kinds of toolboxes. Okay, we have 3 kinds of toolboxes. I actually made some notes here. There we go. So we have 3 kinds of toolboxes. Land Toolbox. Okay, the Land Toolbox is enabled by Primeval Titan, as well as Ancient Stirrings, and in this build of the deck, which I really like, Adventurous Impulse. Hey Remisen, how you doing? As well as Tolaria West itself. Okay, Tolaria West can transmute, and you can get other lands as well. This is very relevant because a lot of the times we are kind of like scrambling to find a bounce land. Okay, the bounce lands are very good at enabling our deck, and they are actual card advantage. Okay, because we are adding 2 mana off a single land, so it's actually not uncommon at all to transmute to go find one of our bounce lands. Titan O'Clock, that's like the best username that I have ever seen. Wow, amazing, good job. Welcome to the stream and thanks for the follow. It definitely is Titan O'Clock right now. You got that. So that's gonna be the toolbox number 1. Okay, we have our land toolbox. That's why we have a lot of lands that do stuff. So we can go find them with Tolaria West, Primeval Titan, and with either one of the cantrips. Then we have the creature toolbox. Okay, we don't have in the main deck. We only have Primeval Titans. It's Primeval Titans, Reclamation Sage, which I will explain a little bit further why this is our one-off in the main deck, as well as our little guys. This of course gets enhanced post board, where we add four four silver bullets to our deck, and we can add a ton more. And you should add a ton more in terms of the metagame that you're expecting to find. Okay, so you can play a bunch of things like, for example, what cards have I played for Dragon Lord Romoka, Dragon Lord Romoka and Atarka. You know, basically any green creature that you can think of, if it has a purpose, and it has a reason to be there, it can be part of your creature toolbox. Your creature toolbox is enabled by Summoner's Pact. Okay? Which, I don't know if you noticed, but the cost of this is 0. That's convenient, huh? That's good deck building right there. Okay? We can use Tolaria West to find more creatures. This is very, very, very effective, and it turns our Primeval Titans in what I like calling Squadron Hawk Titans. Okay? Except instead of 1/1 flyers, they are 6/6 trampling dudes that get more lands. Okay? So that's the toolbox aspect of it. Okay? Finally, we have what I describe as your interaction toolbox. Okay, your interaction toolbox is gonna be Pact of Negation, which we can find off Tolaria West, and both Walking Ballista and Engineering Explosives. All of this can be found either by Tolaria West, or they can be found by Steerings. Not in the case of Pact of Negation, but Walking Ballista and Explosives can be found off Steerings. Also, post Sideboard, you get access to Tormod's Crypt, which is very, very relevant in the current metagame because of Dredge, Storm, KCI. All of these decks have a tough time going off through a Tormod's Crypt, and you being able to transmute for a 0 mana instant speed answer to graveyard, it's very, very, very useful. Okay, so those are all 3 toolboxes. Okay. Now, how we play on every single match is going to be determined by what our opponents can do to stop us. Matt Bluebird, thank you very much. Yes, Tolaria West also can be found off Ancient Stirrings and Adventurous Impulse. Both of these can find Tolaria West, which means that finding Tolaria West means that you're able to transmute for Summoner's Pact, which means you're able to transmute for Primeval Titan. Or you can, transmute Tolaria West for a Walking Ballista or Explosives if that's what you're looking for. So every single match plays out differently. Yes, you do have a combo finish. You do have like a combo possibility, I guess. And you need that in order to succeed in Modern nowadays. It's very important for you to have a broken part of your deck in order to be competitive in Modern, because every deck has a nut draw, and we do have that nut draw, and that nut draw is the fastest in the format, I think, barring some kind of meme deck like the Narset combo or like Grisherbrand, which at this point Grisherbrand is mostly a meme deck. It's not very good, but barring one of those decks, Amulet's nut draw is the fastest in the format, and it's actually a turn 2 kill, which we have actually achieved on this stream on multiple occasions. Cool. So, we got our toolboxes. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I guess Storm can win on turn 2 too. Yeah, okay, you got me. I think KCI can win on... Infect can win on turn 2. There you go. That also works. So that is kind of the idea, okay? That is kind of the idea behind the deck, and those are the concepts. Now, every single matchup is gonna play out differently. Every single matchup is gonna play out differently. The way that you play against Burn is gonna be completely different than the way you play against Control, than the way you play against Dredge, than the way you play against Storm. So it's very important for you to know your deck inside and out in order to know what you need to be watching out for, okay? What you need to play around basically, what ways they can stop you, and how you can stop them from killing you. Okay, those are the most important things that you need to be trying to figure out. Also, there's a lot of math involved in this deck. Mostly that math is mana. Most of that math involves mana, meaning, okay, how much mana can I create this turn if I sequence my cards this way and this way? What are the possible draws that I can have in order to draw like an untapped source in order to like play my Amulet on turn one, which will enable my hand, or like that is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. How much mana can I end up with in play after I resolve and I attack with my Primeval Titan, because I need to pay for like both Summoner's Pact and Pact of Negation on my upkeep, so I want to make sure that I have enough mana to pay for both. That is the kind of math that is involved with this deck, and that if you have ever watched my stream, you will hear me doing a lot of mumbling and doing like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, trying to figure out how much mana I'm gonna have with next turn, and what is taxing my mana on my next turn. How many packs I need to pay for or whatever, and then what does that mana allow me to do on the following turn. All of these things you need to be aware of. This is not a deck that you can play turn by turn. This is not a deck that you can play turn by turn. You need to plan your turns multiple turns in advance. Okay, you need to, on turn one, try to figure out how you can get to cast your prime time the quickest way possible, and what your hand does in terms of trying to what would interrupt you basically, and how you can adapt to that interaction. Okay. So there is a ton of play to the deck, and experience is the main thing that you can do to get to understand how all of this works. Cool. Another thing that is interesting to know is what I was talking about. Okay, what we need to be looking for in different matchups. Once you start goldfishing the deck, you will understand what a turn 3 primetime hand looks like, and what a turn 4 primetime looks like. And that is how you measure hands, by the way. You measure them in, okay, this hand can make a Primeval Titan on turn 3, or on turn 4, or on turn 5. Some decks, in some matchups, you will need to be as resilient as possible. Okay, let's say that you're playing against blue-white control, or you're playing against Jund, or some black-green deck, or Mardu. In those decks, what you want to be doing is against those decks, I guess. What you need to be doing is you need to be making your land drops. Okay, you need to be hitting your land drops. You need to reliably have enough mana to cast Primeval Titan, because your hand will get shredded to pieces against mid-range decks like Black, Green, and Mardu, and so your initial hand doesn't really matter that much, and you need to know what kind of interaction they will be bringing in. In the case of Mardu, they have Blood Moon and stuff like that. In the case of Black, Green, or Jund, you need to play around Fulminators, Stamping Spheres, and stuff like that. Okay, and all of this is, you just need to be aware, and you need to be playing around from turn 1. Okay, you need to be sequencing your lands from turn 1, and land sequencing is mistake number 1 that newer players to the deck make. You cannot just randomly play out your lands. You need to know what lands are going to be coming into play untapped, and how that's going to affect your subsequent turns. And in order for that, maybe you needed to play a tapped land on turn 2 instead of on turn 1, because you wanted to like cantrip on turn 1 to try and find a bounce land. And bounce lands coming into play tapped will mess up your sequence because you want to play Asuza on turn 3 in order to enable your turn for Primeval Titan. And how you sequence your lands. Now I'm going to talk about Asuza in a second. All of this needs to be planned from turn 0, okay? When you look at your opening hand, you need to be thinking, okay, so turn 1 is going to be this, because that would allow me to turn 2 do this, and turn 3 we can do this, and and go off, or whatever. So that is going to be... the gameplay starts from turn 0. When you look at your opening hand, you already need to be thinking about these things. Now, let's go over the individual card choices. I want to start with the creatures, then we will go over to the lands, and then we will talk about all the other random things. Number 1, Primeval Titan. This is the enabler of the deck. Okay, the deck functions... The second after this Primeval Titan resolves, and everything that comes before Primeval Titan is getting to Primeval Titan, like finding a Primeval Titan, being able to get enough mana to cast a Primeval Titan, or surviving, making sure we survive until we get to the point where we can cast a Primeval Titan, okay? The deck is centered around this card. This is completely irrelevant, okay? The deck should be called Titan. The deck should be called Primeval Titan. It should not be called Amulet. This is what the deck revolves around, okay? This enables our value engine, if that's what we're looking for. This enables our combo, if that's what you're looking for. And this allows us to survive by fetching like ways to delay the game and make sure that we can leverage this Primeval Titan into a win. It even finds more Primeval Titans with the interaction that I talked about earlier. Now, once you cast Primeval Titan, you need to, again, know what your opponent can do to kill your Primeval Titan. Okay? Yeah, it's not Amulet of Vigor combo. That's... Don't say that. That's just tilting me right now. If we... what was I saying? Oh yeah, what my opponent can do in order to stop this Primeval Titan, how we can play around what my opponent could have, and what is the best way to set up a kill in the next turn or the following turn or the turn afterwards. Primeval Titan doesn't always win the game immediately, even though sometimes he does. But it doesn't really win the game immediately, unlike, again, something like KCI or Ad Nauseam or stuff like that. What Primeval Titan does, though, is it puts us ahead. It's very, very good. As soon as it comes down, it puts us far ahead, and it allows us to get even further ahead by fetching either more Primeval Titans, by fetching counter magic, so we can interact with my opponent's play, maybe ways of getting rid of Primeval Titan, or maybe ways of comboing themselves, and it gives us ways to survive, to stop Tron, to not die, to stop graveyard recursion or stuff like that, even to make future Primeval Titans uncounterable. All of that stuff is enabled by one or multiple triggers from Primeval Titan. So this is the backbone of the deck. This is the most important card, and we will rarely side it out in some matchups. It definitely happens, but this is the most important card in the deck. Okay, so respect Primeval Titan. Second in line, Asuza. Asuza is a legendary creature. 1/2, you may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Yes, it's a legendary creature, and yes, we are playing the full 4 copies. Do not play less than 4 Asuzas. Asuza is the best ramp spell we have. If we could play 6, we would play 6 Asuzas. Okay, even though it's legendary. Yes, it sucks to draw multiples of them, but your win percentage will go much, much, much higher if you see when in the games that you see Asuza than the games where you don't see Asuza. So we definitely want to see Asuza the most frequently that we possibly can. Okay, you want to see Asuza every single game because it's the fastest and the quickest way to get to Primeval Titan. Also, even though it's a legendary, it will get killed. You know, people really, people are very afraid of Asuza. Sometimes they are correctly afraid of Asuza, sometimes they are incorrectly afraid of Asuza. And I will explain this right now. You will see that our land base has lands that don't use the stack and lands that do use the stack when they come into play. So I will put this over here. These lands right here, all of these lands have a trigger that goes on the stack when they come into play. All of these lands on the right side do not have a trigger when they come into play. How is this relevant? Because of Asuza. Asuza's ability is only in effect while she's in play. Okay? So let's say that we have 3 mana in play, and we have, we have 3 lands, whatever, 3 gemstone mines in play. We tap the 3 gemstone mines and we play Asuza. We have 3 land drops right now, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to play your Simic Growth Chamber, trigger goes on the stack, your opponent kills your Asuza. Wrong. You just gave your opponent a chance to react. Your opponent does not get priority when you play lands. Okay? When you play lands that you don't use the stack, like this one's on the right side, your opponent does not get priority. Meaning that you can basically do like the Affinity thing and just like spit out all of the lands in your hand as long as you are not using the stack with them. This is extremely important in the face of interaction. You need to sequence your lands properly so that you can play around your opponent having some kind of interaction. You want to make sure that you get full value from your Asuza whenever possible. And by full value, I mean all 3 land drops. Okay, your land drop from the turn, and then the 2 extra ones. This is very, very interesting, and it's something that, at some point it starts becoming second nature. You just sequence your lands in the proper way because you've done it so much. But at first, it's very, very tricky. So, for example, based on the situation that I was describing before, okay, we have 3 gemstones in play, and we have a Simic Growth Chamber in play. We are untapping, it's our turn 3, and we have these 3 lands in play, and we tap 3 mana to cast Asuza. That's a mistake right there. What you should do is you tap one of the gemstone mines and you float mana. Okay, you have a green mana floating. Then you play Simic Growth Chamber. Trigger goes on the stack, you return the gemstone mine that's tapped. Now you use your land drop for the turn, correct? Now, you tap your other 2 lands, you cast the Asuza, and now you can replay the gemstone mine without using the stack. Using the first extra land drop from Asuza. And then you can play any other land with, at this point doesn't matter because you already got full value of your Asuza. I hope this is clear. It's a little bit tricky to to explain it on the abstract. I'm trying to be as clear as I can possibly be, but it's kind of like a little bit weird how all of this works. But it's very important for you to get comfortable with how this works, so you can again get the most value from your Asuza, because chances are that she will get killed. And this is even something that happens all the time. Okay, you do your thing, you get your full value from Asuza, and Asuza immediately gets bolted, and it's just like, at this point it just doesn't matter, because you already, Asuza did what she had to do, and she even made your opponent discard the card, so it's even better. Okay, so if you're playing against Amulet, and I know that I am kind of lighting myself on fire by doing this, but at that point, more often than not, the Asuza is just irrelevant. It just did its job, so don't waste your lightning bolt on the Asuza, especially if it's a Path to Exile. I get extremely happy when my opponent paths the Asuza right after I made both land drops. Don't do that. Don't do that. Save that path for a prime time. Don't waste it on the Asuza. That's only gonna make you lose. Now, you will see that when I separated the lands into trigger lands and non-trigger lands, I left Vesuva over here. The reason I did this is because Vesuva comes into play as a copy of whatever you want, basically, that's already in play. Meaning that Vesuva if he comes into play as a copy of one of this, will not use the stack. If it comes into play as a copy of one of this, it will not. It will use the stack. Okay, so that's very important for you to have into account. Okay, be sure that you know yet another reason why sequencing your lands is so important, because of the Suba as well. Okay, the Suba is fine if it's copying one of this. It's not fine if it's copying one of this, meaning that it won't use the stack, obviously. Things get a little bit trickier when there's an Amulet in play. Okay, when there's an Amulet in play, man, there's so many moving things around in this in this explanation. When there's an Amulet in play, these guys over here come into play tapped, which means that they will trigger Amulet. What that means is that this will now use the stack. So you need to be careful there. If there's an Amulet in play, make sure that you sequence your lands properly so you get full value of our Asuza. Yeah. So you wanna watch out for that. Okay, having Amulet in play will change this, and you need to play accordingly. But that's the only extra explanation, I guess, that I wanted to do regarding that. So that's pretty much all that I wanted to explain about Asuza. Besides the fact that I said earlier, just play the 4 Asuzas. People all the time, they are like, okay, so what can I do to play instead of Asuza? I want to play only 3 Asuzas. Like, just play 4. Just play 4. It's your best ramp card. It's your best ramp card. Think of it as a Summer Bloom, okay? Would you have played 3 Summer Blooms if you could? No, you would have played the full 4. That's if you could have played 8, you would have played 8 Summer Blooms, okay? Asuza is the same thing. It's simply the best ramp spell we have. It's simply the best ramp spell we have. So play the full 4, treat it as a sorcery if you will, but don't be upset if you draw multiples of them. It's part of the deck. It's part of the deck. So it's the same thing as when you draw your one of Pact of Negation, or you draw your full 4 pacts in like game in the first 3 turns. It happens, and it's fine. It's just how Magic works. It has variance. Deal with it. But actually, if you want to, take variance out of this deck, play the full 4 Asuzas. Okay? And some people will keep insisting on... My favorite is when people say, yeah, I take out 1 Asuza and I bring in 1 Sakama. And it's just like... So taking your 3-drop that lets you get to 6 and put a 9-drop instead. It doesn't make sense at all to me. I just don't understand why people will want to do that, but it still happens all the time. People are saying stuff like that, and I'm just done. I'm just done. Okay, so this is gonna be the last time I say it. Play 4 Asuzas. End of the story. Don't try to play less. Play 4. Cool. Finally, actually, almost finally, we have Stripe Scout. Stripe Scout is very, very interesting. It added a ton of play to the deck. Before we simply had Summer Bloom in this slot before the bannings. And Summer Bloom was pretty straightforward. You play your sorcery, you play your lands, pass. Fine. Stripe Scout adds a ton of play to the deck. First of all, it's just a 1/1 dude. It's not, the most impressive thing. But the ability can be activated at instant speed. What does this mean? This means instant speed blockers, instant speed game life, instant speed life gain, I guess, instant speed graveyard hate. Very, very relevant against Dredge and stuff like that. And also instant speed LD, as well as instant speed ways to protect our lands. This is huge. This is huge in matchups like blue-white control, I guess Ponza, even though Ponza is a terrible matchup, but against Ponza, against John and decks that bring in a Fulminator Mage, against Assassin's Trophy, against all of those decks, Scout is insane. Scout is insane. We can basically flash any of these lands into play at instant speed, and then we can return whichever land was targeted by our opponents and return that to your hand, fizzling the effect. This is especially massive against blue-white control. With the printing of Field of Ruin, this is now the go-to way for blue-white control players. I guess blue-white X or even blue-white blue X, I guess, because Grixis sometimes plays this as well, even though Grixis is not very played. This is like the way that control decks interact with your lands now, because it doesn't cost you a land drop, right? Because you can just target your opponent's land and then you get a land drop for your trouble. You get a land back for your trouble. And it costs 2 mana to activate though. So when your opponent is playing like blue-white control or something, and you have a scout in play, and they tap 2 mana to activate Field of Ruin, if you flash in any bounce land and you return whichever land they target, not only has your opponent time walked themselves because they spent 3 mana to 3 mana and do literal nothing, but also the ability from Field of Ruin gets countered because it has no legal targets, which means that you effectively Stone Rain them. You effectively destroyed their land for no cost at all. What that means is that, surprisingly, Sakura Tribe Scout is probably the single best card in the deck against blue-white strategies. Against blue-white red, not so much because it dies to bolt very easily. But against like blue-white strategies, Sakura Tribe Scout is insane. It's very, very good. And it's the single card that you want to see in your opening hand every single game that you play against blue-white. Tribe Scout also allows you to ramp, even though it's much worse than Asuza. But the stuff that it does is, it has a lot of utility with using your lands at instant speed. And and also another very interesting thing, when you're attacking with a Primeval Titan, okay, and you don't have an Amulet in play, you can, for example, get lands like Sunhome Fortress of the Legion, this card, basically. And if you have 4 mana to activate it, Primeval Titan will put the lands into play tapped, correct? So what you can do is you can find Sunhome and a bounce land. You bounce Sunhome to your hand because of the bounce land trigger, and then you can play it at instant speed in order to give double strike to your Primeval Titan. This is something that was not possible before with Summer Bloom, but that Sakura Tribe Scout enables very, very nicely. So Sakura Tribe Scout really adds a ton of play to the deck, and it creates some possible lines that simply weren't possible before. So Sakura Tribe Scout is a very, very nice addition to the deck, which is one of the main reasons why we're still able to play the deck, and it still does well. Okay, finally, yeah, but you don't necessarily need Scout with that. You just need land drops. That's why I didn't really talk about that. But yeah, that's another interaction that I didn't talk about earlier, which I will point out. Even if you don't have an Amulet in play, if you have red and white mana available to you, you can when you play the Primeval Titan, you can fetch a bounce land and slay a Stronghold, and then you play Stronghold as your land for turn, and use red-white mana in order to activate the Stronghold, and you can haste the Primeval Titan without an Amulet of Vigor in play. Alright, so final creature from our creature toolbox. Rexage. Rexage is in the main deck because, in case you haven't noticed before, we use a lot of lands abilities, which means that Blood Moon is a beating. Blood Moon is the worst possible card that we can play against. We very rarely beat a Blood Moon, and when we do, it's thanks to this card. Just being able to Summoner's Pact for a disenchant effect, okay, for a way to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, it's huge. It's definitely very, very big. Right now in the modern metagame, Reclamation Sage is also excellent against a bunch of Uh, yeah, Shauna, you're correct. Chalice on Zero is also very bad, but Chalice on Zero blanks are packed. So at that point, we really need to, just naturally draw the Reclamation Sage. Um, I will talk about that in a second when I talk about explosives. But for now, let's talk about Rex Sage. Rex Sage is very, very good in the current modern metagame. Sage destroys Aether Vials against humans and spirits decks. It destroys detention spheres against blue-white control. I'm just talking about main deck cards, correct? Detention Sphere, Search for Ascanta also gets destroyed by Reclamation Sage. It destroys Ravager and it destroys Hardened Scales, both of them, as well as stuff like Overseer. What else? There's just so many things in so many decks in Modern that just use artifact or enchantments that it's just an insanely good card to have access to in game one. And if you're playing against a deck that simply does not use any of this at all, something like Storm, for example, it's just your go-to cut. It's like the first thing that you cut out is gonna be Rex Sage. Um, yeah. There's as people are pointing out in chat, there's a ton of cards that Rex Sage is excellent against. Even against Daybreak Coronet, you can destroy the other enchantment besides the Daybreak Coronet, and the Daybreak Coronet can fall off. It's very fun when that happens. When Rex Sage is a 2-for-1, it's very cool. Oh, also Eidolon. It's huge. It's huge against Burn. If in fact, I was playing an FNM the other day, and this interaction literally happened, where my opponent just kept a Goblin Guide Eidolon hand, and I was able to my opponent play their Eidolon, and I saged it, and then I traded with his Goblin Guide, being effectively a 2-for-1. It was insane. Yeah. Post sideboard, more often than not, Reclamation Sage will get even better. Even against decks like spirits, humans, and stuff like that, I do not board out Reclamation Sage because Damping Spheres is very popular right now. I will board it out against Black Green X because at that point we're bringing in an extra explosives, and explosives on 2 is exactly the number that we want it against Black Green decks, so that's actually kind of nice. But yeah, so Reclamation Sage it's a very, very useful card to have access to in the main deck. However, you should adapt. What I mean by this is your main deck bullet. Usually you have access to a main deck bullet, especially if you play a list like this without Adventurous Impulses, which some people, this is the list that I used to play before I tested out Adventurous Impulse, and I found out that I loved it. This is the list that I was playing, and as you can see here, I was aiming towards a pretty heavy spirits metagame. And again, spirits and humans, having access to Hornet Queen in the main deck is very, very huge. So I was basically having access to effectively 5 copies of Hornet Queen, which basically a Primeval Titan, which and gets Tolera West and CB Ghost Chamber, also give me indirect access to a Hornet Queen. So it was very, very good when I was testing this version of the deck, and I was very happy with the main deck Hornet Queen. So if the metagame allows for it, if the metagame requires for it, basically, let's put it that way, then having Hornet Queen as your main deck card is very viable. Also, Obstinate Baloth is very nice to have access to. Obstinate Baloth is very good at having access to in game 1 sometimes against black and green decks, against Burn and other aggressive decks. Having access to Obstinate Baloth on game 1 it can be backbreaking for your opponent. So all of these things should be accounted for, and depending on the metagame that you expect to face, you should change your configuration. You shouldn't just blindly, okay, I'm just gonna play this. For an open metagame, this is probably what I would go for. But if you are expecting, let's say, for like your FNM or like a local PPTQ, chemistry, thank you very much for the follow. For like a local PPTQ or RPTQ where you know, okay, there's gonna be like a ton of humans and spirits, and there's not gonna be too much like Mardu or decks like that, you can definitely do the swap and you can play Hornet Queen in your main deck while having Reclamation Sage in the sideboard. Also, other cards that you can play. I do not recommend it at all. I do not recommend it at all. But some people really enjoy playing this card. I think this card is win more and it's a meme. 9 mana is way too much. But 7 mana is definitely reachable, and it's somewhat reasonable to play something like a Dragon Lord Atarka if you want to deal with your opponent's humans, or if you want to deal with your opponent's... it's not so good against spirits, because if they have like Drogskull Captain and Phantasmal Image, then, and you know, or 2 Drogskull Captains or whatever, then Atarka does nothing. I guess you can kill a Noble Hierarch, but that's about it. Whereas, you know, Hornet Queen still does a very fine job at buying you time. Dragon Lord Atarka is not so effective there. Dragon Lord Romoka is also a fine inclusion. This one is just much more narrow. It's just much more narrow. So I don't think I recommend this one as much in the main deck. But it's, again, if you have like a blue-white heavy metagame. Well, if you have a blue-white heavy metagame, I would recommend running Tireless Tracker in the main board. But this is what I'm talking about. You see, you should you know, you will have way more success. You will have way more success if you adapt your deck to the expected metagame that you are thinking that you will face. And that's one of the strengths of the deck. The deck keeps shifting constantly. And I don't know if you have seen my stream earlier or before at all, but you will see a lot of things that I try out. I tried out stuff like World Breaker. We tried out Trinket Mage. We tried out the Hornet Queen in the main deck, like I was saying you before, which I was very happy with. You can try out. I have tried out a ton of different things. And, you know, to different levels of success, you know, but you should try things out. Never discount anything unless it's something, you know, that is just not good, you know. Like, for example, I tried out what's his name, Elvish Rejuvenator. Like, this guy was not great. Chemistry, thank you very much for the subscription. Alright, this also allows me to talk about that. If you want to support the channel, if you want to support the stream, you get access to this primetime emote right here that you see Chemistry making a very good use of. We are a Primeval Titan channel, if you hadn't figured that out yet. Cool. Awesome, thank you very much for the support. We got 1 subscriber today. Awesome. Sweet, so you should... Let's see those prime times. Oh yeah. Cool, so you had a question too. Remaisan, yes. Versus a metagame with spirits and humans, Hornet Queen in the main deck is what I would recommend. 100%. Restwords, thank you very much for the follow. And why not more Cavernous Souls? Good question. And at one point, I was running more Cavernous Souls. Since I started running the Adventurous Impulses in the main deck, which I will talk about in a minute, I simply have not had the need for more Cavernous Souls. And I really wanted to cut a land. Because cantrips allow me to play a smaller land count. And it's just, I would rather have the 3rd basic forest than the Cavernous Souls, because I definitely want to have every single one of my other lands is better. Cool. So we talked a little bit about the main deck toolbox. The sideboard toolbox is, you know, one that you should also adapt to, and I am working on a guide about the deck right now. I am currently like 56 pages in, and I'm still not even remotely close to being done. But there's a lot to talk about this deck. Um, but in that guide, I was talking about basically a lot of different possibilities that you can run, and like which contexts it would make sense to run them, or whether the card is actually worth it or not. So I made like a pretty exhaustive list of possible cards to run. Um, so when I finish that, I will, there will be much deeper, resource in that matter. But the ones that I want to talk about are Hornet Queen, which I talked about a little bit. This one is insane against humans, against affinity, against spirits, against what else? Against black green decks, Hornet Queen is insane. It basically stops all of the Tarmogoyfs and stuff. And with the printing of Assassin's Trophy, they have been trimming on Maelstrom Pulses. So they have only like one or at most two Maelstrom Pulses in the 75, which means that Hornet Queen is insane. It's really, really good. The only card that wrecks you is Liliana the Last Hope, which it's kind of likely they side out anyway post Sideboard. But Hornet Queen is very, very good. Obstinate Baloth, excellent against aggro decks, against burn, against a discard decks, of course. Especially it makes Colonist Commander and Liliana of the Veil much, much worse. And against, like the Iset Phoenix deck that everybody's playing, Baloth is very reasonable. As a 4/4 beater that, gains life, and gaining life in that matchup is very important. Also against any kind of like Snapcaster deck, having a 4-drop that they need to spend multiple cards on is huge. And as well, again, the life gain is very relevant. Would Thractus be good in the Baloth slot? Yes, Thractus is very much a possibility. Thractus is, at one point I was even running both of them. Thractus is worse, I would say, against burn, because even though it gains one more life, it's very common with access to scout and explore. It's very common to make it to 4 mana on turn 3, and having access to Baloth on turn 3 against burn is just huge. It's just massive. Even Amulet with a bounce land helps you get there on 4 mana on turn 3, and 5 mana is just like a huge difference in those matchups in particular. Of course, Baloth is also much better against Obstinate Baloth. Chemistry, thank you very much for the host. I appreciate it. Welcome everybody for Chemistry stream. We're doing a deck tech on Amulet today. But Thractus is better against decks that can easily deal with an Obstinate Baloth. So say something like Blue-White Control. I would never bring in Obstinate Baloth because I don't think it's worth a card. But Thractus is definitely worth a card, because even when they path it, you still get the 3/3 for your troubles, Even if they terminus it or they verdict it, it doesn't matter, because it's a when it leaves the battlefield trigger versus a die trigger. So Thractus is very good if you are, if you're expecting more of that. Now, against something like Dredge, where the 4th toughness is just huge, same thing with Burn, then I would probably run Baloth over Thractus, which is the reason why I'm running Baloth over Thractus right now. But Baloth gets the nod mostly because of the interaction with discard spells. If your opponent pluses a Liliana or K commands and makes you discard, and you can like instant speed in response, Pact for Baloth, the blowout is usually massive, and you are literally getting card advantage at that point, basically. So card advantage and tempo advantage. So it's huge. Chemistry, I will answer your question in a second. Let me finish with going through the creatures in the deck. Then we have Tireless Tracker. Tireless Tracker is insane. Tireless Tracker is one of my favorite cards of all time. Right after this guy right here. And it's insane in the matchups where you need to grind. Okay, because it gets card advantage like no other. Tireless Tracker is insane. If you resolve a Primeval Titan with a Tireless Tracker in play, you're gonna have a very, very hard time losing that game because the card advantage is gonna be unsurmountable. Also, Tireless Tracker with Asuza and a bounce land means that you basically are getting three clues every turn, which is is just insane. Tracker is also very, very good against blue-white decks because it comes down early and before your opponent has access to counter magic, which allows you to basically play a threat that they need to deal with. Otherwise, they will just lose the game. And usually, the way that they have to deal with it is going to be Path to Exile. Path to Exile ramps you, getting you closer to Primeval Titan. So, Tireless Tracker is very, very good in that kind of matchup. It's very good against Blood Moon decks because you can play it off of a single basic forest, and once you get it to 4 toughness, meaning once you crack 2 clues, your opponents, usually Blood Moon decks have a very, very hard time dealing with 4 toughness creatures because their go-to removal spell is Lightning Bolt. So it means that Tireless Tracker won't only have drawn you 2 extra cards, getting you closer to like your answer to Blood Moon, but it will also have basically force your opponent to trade 2 for 1 for the tracker, which at that point it's a 4 for 1, which is just ridiculous, and it's really hard for Blood Moon decks to come back from something like that. And finally, we have Rurik. Rurik Thar. It's a very interesting card. 6 mana, 6/6 vigilance and reach. I have no idea why those are the keywords that were chosen for Rurik, but that's the case. Attacks each combat if able. Very relevant piece of art. Very, very relevant piece of flavor text. I mean, and whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Rurik deals 6 damage to that player. Rurik is going to be your go-to card against decks like Storm, against decks like KCI, and against even against control decks. I find it to be very good because the 6 damage are very, very relevant in that matchup. Basically, your Storm opponents, they need to have a bounce play to return the Rurik Thar to your hand, or they just simply can't. They simply can't win, and they can't afford to dig. They can't afford to dig. Against Titan O'Clock, against Ad Nauseam, I don't think Rurik Thar is very good because usually, they spend all their time. Nice friendly dude, thanks for the follow. That's a nice name. By the time that Rurik Thar comes into play, your opponent will probably have assembled your combo, and if your opponent leads on freaking Angel's Grace, then Rurik is not doing much. So if your opponent is gonna kill you, I mean, you're just gonna die. The only thing that Rurik does is it shortens their clock, and it forces them to like find their combo way quicker. And the thing though is that unless they have a Fire Action and life in play, they will need to be above 6 life in order to combo you off, because the trigger of Rurik will go on the stack before the Angel's Grace actually resolves, which means that they will die with the Angel's Grace on the stack to the Rurik trigger. So that's the only thing that Rurik does, and at that point I would rather be drawing one of my other pieces of interaction in that matchup. So I'm not so fond of Rurik in the Ad Nauseam matchup, but I think he's very, very good against, of course, Storm and KCI, against control decks, especially blue-white, where the life actually matters, and like Grixis and stuff like that. And I even bring it against stuff like Mardu, not because it's great, but because when we play against those kind of decks, the way that we lose the most is to the card Blood Moon, because our deck is really bad against the card Blood Moon. So Rurik being able to be cast off of a single basic is just huge, and sometimes those decks will struggle to get rid of it without access to spells, without access to removal spells. I mean. Now I was saying that there was the attacks each combat if able was very relevant flavor text. I don't know if you guys remember when Amulet did top 2 in the hands of Michael Mapson at, I don't remember which GP, but I think it was this year. and he searched for Rurik against Madness playing KCI, and Rurik was forced to attack. And then Madness double blocked with 2 Scrap Trollers, and Rurik basically, chomp attacked. So that's the attacks each turn if able is a very relevant piece of text. So don't never forget about that. It can lose you a game if you are not careful enough. So yeah, so those are the creatures that I wanted to talk about, because those are the ones that I'm running right now. You can also again when I release the full guide, there will be much more in there. GP Hartford, thank you very much, my Bluebird. So if you watch the finals of that GP, you will see that interaction actually coming up. It's funny because usually you play Rick Thar and people just kind of concede to it. So I totally understand where Mapson was coming from. He's like, yeah, I play this and I win, and it's just like, well, there's actually there's actually an extra piece of text in there, which is funny. All right, so those are going to be the creatures that I wanted to talk about. The only one that I'm not talking about here that I will point out right now is Emrakul, the Promised End. This started because I saw somebody play a list that was running Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and then I thought, might as well try to go for Emrakul and see what happens. I was trying to find an answer, like a go over the top card against the blue-white matchup, and I thought of Emrakul, and since I was running Adventurous Impulse, you can basically find Emrakul off of Asian Steerings and Adventurous Impulse. Unfortunately, those are the only ways that you can find it. You can't pack for it or anything like that because it's colorless. But the impact is just so huge that I think if you are having it as a bullet for those kind of matchups has been very, very interesting. Tiny Clock, no, I have not, and that's one thing that I have tried in the past. In the past, meaning like 2 years ago, and I will probably try that out again and see how that goes. But honestly, I've been super happy with Spell Pierce. I will go over my card choices later on for sure. There have been some questions that I'm going to answer right now. Change one turn for Cavern. No, 100% no. Don't do it. Don't. You need your bounce lands. Bounce lands are sometimes your best lands in the deck. You do need your bounce lands, and I will go over the bounce land choices in a second. Now I'm actually going to go over the land choices. But no, definitely play all the bounce lands. They are great. Play at least 9. In fact, I used to play 10. Like when back in the Summer Bloom days, we used to play 10. And because now no more Summer Bloom makes things a little bit more complicated, so we're playing effectively 10 if you want to count Vesuva as a bounce land. But bounce lands are huge. Bounce lands are huge because of the interactions that we have in our deck, as well as we do need the actual card advantage that bounce lands generate. Bounce land count as 2 lands in this deck because of Asuza and like our ways that we have of playing multiple lands. So by having 2 lands in one, especially in this version of the deck, then there's a version that runs Lotus Bloom, which I don't think I'm qualified to talk because I don't have as much experience with that version of the deck, but I will talk about a little bit about the differences. But with this version, you should not play less than 9 bounce lands. I think that's like the bare minimum that you can play. Also, I don't think you need the second Cavern, and I will talk about that a little bit later. Well, you only have 1 Cavern, so you don't speak the controller. I've seen videos, so you haven't tried with both Giant and Human being uncontrollable because you could not bounce. Yes, I don't think that Cavernous Souls the second Cavernous Souls is as relevant as the other 3. And the games where that happens, I am not sure how a second Cavern would have helped me. Usually Cavern is a land that you transmute for a lot, and with having access to 7 cantrips, you will see it more often than normal in matches where you really want to see it, and in matches where you don't want to see it, then it's just a land that does nothing. It just taps for colored mana for Tribe Scout, but it doesn't even tap for colored mana for your cantrips or Explore or even to pay for a Pact of your upkeep. So it's not an amazing land. If you expect a lot of control, you can play a second Cavern on the sideboard, but I don't think I would play a second Cavern in the main. Right now, with the way the meta is, there's just too much Dredge, Spirits, and Humans, which are decks where Cavern is just not amazing against. Let's see any more question. What would you say is the most common mistake new players make when playing Amulet Titan? Not thinking ahead. That's definitely the most common mistake. They just play lands mindlessly, and they're like, "Oh, cool, I have a land. Cool, play it right now." And they don't plan ahead. And that can sometimes, very often, I mean by sometimes, it could mean that you time walk yourself and you are preventing like a turn 3 Titan and you're playing it on turn 4, or a turn 4 Titan and you're playing it on turn 5, and that basically means that you just die. So I don't think that I don't think that you should play hastily. You need to stop and you need to think your plays through very carefully with this deck. It's very, very punishing. It's an extremely punishing deck. It's not like Burn, where if you Lava Spike on turn 1, or if you Bolt in turn 1 instead of playing Lava Spike, or if you like lead on Goblin Guide when you should have led on like Monastery Swift Spear or whatever. It's not the end of the world most of the times. Although sometimes it does punish you too. But in this deck, it's like the difference between winning and losing. It's just straight up. It's straight up. So mistakes in sequencing are the thing that I see the most often. That's definitely like mistake number one that I see newer players. Kaimis, thank you very much for your subscription. Thanks for hanging out, and hope you have a great rest of your day. I replace a cover with Celestia Sanctuary number 2 for budget reasons. Yeah, I mean, you don't need Cavern. If you can afford to, my Bluebird, I would recommend you play Grove of the Burn Willows. With this build, with multiple Abrades and Firespouts in the sideboard, the card that I would go to is I would go for Grove instead of the Cavernous Souls. Is the red from the fourth turf worth it over the Sanctuary, or is it a marginal trade? No, it's actually a huge change. I think it makes sense, and I talked to Edgard, and he said that he thought... Edgard Magalies, for people that don't know him, he's the person that has had the most success with Amulet ever, I think. Even to this day, he's still doing really well with it. The main thing is that before, we didn't have such a red heavy sideboard. We play Dismember and stuff like that, but since the printing of Abrade is just so good in the matchups where we want it, and so flexible, being able to kill Damping Sphere is huge. Being able to kill like Oblivion Stones and stuff like that, and being able to kill Meddling Mage is also massive against humans. Hat Trick, thank you for the follow. So what he was saying is that the one of Sanctuary is a relic of the past, and I do agree with him 100%. We want to, as reliably as possible, have access to Firespout on turn 3 in the matchups where we bring Firespout for, and we only have Gemstone Mine. Yeah, we only have 9 red sources. Potentially 10 when Vesuva is there. So it's one of those things that I think it was an amazing change, and I think it made a lot of sense, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. It does, however, change the way that you fetch with Primeval Titan. I have had exactly one... This is funny. I was playing at a side event at GP Vegas, and I forgot to make this change. So I was playing with 3 turfs and 1 Celestial Sanctuary, and I was playing against a player that was playing the Black-White Eldrazi Taxes deck, and I resolved my prime time, and I am fetching, and I fetch for the Celestial Sanctuary, and I'm like, oh cool, I have the Celestial Sanctuary because he had already Ghost Squirted in my Boros Garrison. So I'm like, Oh, cool. That's awesome that I forgot. And I won the game because I was able to double strike a Titan with exactly enough mana by fetching for the Sanctuary. And I won the match because I forgot to to do this change. However, I think that wasn't the rule. I thought that was just a very, very funny exception. But I think that having access to turn 3 fire spout in the matches where you do want it is way more important than having access to that specific play that I just announced. How often does it affect your double strike potential? It doesn't enough. It doesn't enough to not warrant it. You can. It basically changes sequencing. It changes like the way that you use or don't use your gemstone mines. Because your gemstone mines are now like your only white source besides the one of Boros Garrison, and it also kind of prevents you from playing cards like Dragon Lord Dromoka. Whoops. It makes it much harder to play cards, white cards in your sideboard, or especially Sigarda. Like, I don't think that you can reliably cast this card with this build of the deck. I don't think that you can do it. I don't think that you can reliably cast it even with this Silencia Sanctuary. I think you kind of need to build your deck for this, but still, it's just like it's a card that people used to run back in the day with the Summer Bloom days, and I don't think it's just good nowadays at all. Cool. Cool, Elf Kid, you have come to the right place, because we're talking about, it's all about people that have never played the deck like yourselves. Remaisan, he's asking whether it's better to play the Third of Raid than the Relic. I'm currently playing a split between Relic and Tormod's Crypt. If I were to play a Third of Raid, yes, this is the card that I would take out, but I'm not. I think that right now there's just such an insane amount of dredge on Magic Online, and for whatever reason there's a lot of black green as well. There's a lot of Jund, and Relic is just so good in those matchups that it's nice to have like access to a little hedge. If the metagame were mostly spirits and stuff like that, then yes, for sure I would have a Third of Raid instead of the Relic. That's, again, as always, it's a metagame choice. You should build your deck for the metagame that you are expecting to face. 100%. All right, sweet. We're gonna keep going on with the decks. Now we're going to go through the lands. Okay. First of all, the thing that only we do in Modern, which is play Ravnica Bounce lands. I explained this a little bit earlier, but these are lands that are actual card advantage because they tap for 2 mana. They combo perfectly with Amulet of Vigor, and it's also very. We need access to all of those lands. You're looking at a 27 land deck with 7 cantrips, and actually 9 cantrips. My bad. And we have all of these ways to ramp. This is not a coincidence, people. We need those lands. Otherwise, we cannot cast our spells. Even with 27 lands and all of these cantrips, I still find myself having mana issues. It's not as common as it used to be, probably, but even in lists like this with 28 lands, you will still lose more games to Mana Screw than Mana Flood. I guarantee that. That's been the case for me since forever, and I've been playing this deck for literal years. You will lose more often the games to Mana Screw than Mana Flood. So we have the bounce lands. The choice is what I explained right now. And I didn't talk about Simic Growth Chamber, but Simic Growth Chamber is huge. We are mostly a green base deck, but our engine is based on having blue mana, which is Tolaria West. With an Amulet in play, if we fetch Tolaria West and Simic Growth Chamber, these 2 lands just by themselves just add enough mana to transmute. And this is just beautiful, actually. It's just like if you have an Amulet in play, you cast a Primeval Titan and you can fetch Simic Growth and Tolaria West. They will both untap, they will give you enough mana to transmute, and the bounce trigger will return the Tolaria West to your hand when you have exactly enough mana to transmute floating. It's just beautiful. Wizards really helped us out. I don't even think they knew it, but they really helped us out when they designed these 2 cards between Future Sight and Dissension. This is just a thing of beauty how this works. So you definitely want 4 semi-growth chambers. No questions there. Now, this is another thing that people love to try to do. In my opinion, this is the best land in the deck. This is the best land in the deck. It's basically a painless City of Brass or Mana Confluence for newer players. It's a painless Mana Confluence that you can return to your hand and you can reset it, so you have even more uses out of it. Sometimes, yes, sometimes you will be destroying it because you use it 3 times and you don't find a bounce land, or the way you sequence your lands, or in order to like add that 1 extra mana to cast your Primeval Titan or whatever. It doesn't matter. This is the best land in your deck. Never, ever, ever play less than 4. This is the best land in our deck. I don't know if I said it enough. This is the best land in our deck. You want it every time. It casts every single one of our spells. We can use it to cast creatures, to cast spells, to pay for pacts, for any pact. We can use it to haste Primeval Titans and to double strike Primeval Titans. We can use it to play bigger engineered explosives if that's what we need. Gemstone Mine is huge. Never play less than 4. The topic of Cavernous Souls. Cavernous Souls is an amazing card in this list. It's incredible. It's the go-to land that you go get against blue-white control, and it's very, very good against any kind of deck that has counter magic. This is also including Merfolk and Spirits, since they usually play Disdainful Stroke or Unified Will. They either play one of those post-board, so Cavernous Souls is huge there. Another important thing, Cavernous Souls is an untapped green source to cast Sakura Tribe Scout in turn 1, which is sometimes something that we will struggle with. We don't have as many untapped green sources on turn 1. We do have more untapped colorless sources. Okay, these are the colorless sources. And these are the green sources. We don't have as many, as you can see. We only have 8. And casting Scout on turn 1 is very important. Cavernous Souls, of course, also casts Amulet of Vigor. I think if Cavernous Souls only had the cast creatures clause, I don't think we would play it, to be honest with you. But since it also taps for colorless, this land is excellent. It makes for uncounterable Titans. It makes for uncounterable Ruriks. It makes for uncounterable Hornet Queens and Tireless Trackers, and it makes for uncounterable Walking Ballistas. This is a very common play pattern against blue-white style control decks. We will have our opponent down to like 6 or 7, and we will have like 20 mana in play. So what we would do is we would bounce the Cavernous Souls, we will replay it naming construct, and you would play a Ballista for like 8 or 9, and then just ping them to death. That's actually something that happens very often against blue-white control decks. Now, something that's interesting about Cavern is that Scout shares the Shaman creature type with Rexage. Asuza shares the human creature type with Tireless Tracker. And Tireless Tracker shares the Scout creature type with Sakura Tribe Scout. So this is very important when you're playing your lands out. You know, if you are expecting to draw, if you have like a Reclamation Sage in your deck, then it is, if you want to cast Scout on turn 1, then it's strictly correct to name Shaman as your creature type. And when you have a Tireless Tracker in your deck, you should be naming Scout, okay? And you should still be able to cast your Sakura Tribe Scout with any of those creature types. Same thing applies with human and human here. So that's something also to watch out for. Cavern is also a land that we transmute for a lot in the control matchup, so always be aware of that. You can transmute for it if you haven't found it with one of your cantrips. Bojuki Bog is pretty straightforward. It's graveyard hate. There's nothing too special about it. The modern metagame is filled with graveyard decks right now. The Phoenix deck, Mardu Pyromancer, the Dredge, obviously, Bridgevine, Even it's sometimes relevant against Burn when they have Grim Levemancers in play. But Jukabog is really, really good right now to have access to in game 1. And it is also something that you can transmute for. Okay? Always, any of the lands that I'm pointing out, remember that you can transmute for them. Colony Garden, I talked a little bit about earlier. Oh yeah, good catch, my Bluebird. Yeah, I didn't talk about it. You can, I mean, I kind of talked about it when I said bounce your cavern to replay it on construct. But yes, you can bounce and you can replay your cavern in order to reset it, and change the creature type that it's naming, of course. Colony Garden is your 0-1. It makes chump blockers very good at chomping big dudes. Like I said earlier, you can attack through a Serum Bridge with this, but it's actually a very relevant land. It's also Liliana of the Veil fodder. When your opponent has an active Liliana of the Veil, when I cast my Primeval Titan, oftentimes my go-to against John style decks will be to fetch Colony Garden plus whatever else, and if possible to maybe do Colony Garden bounce and then replay the Colony Garden, so I have access to Liliana fodder, so I can sacrifice the 0-1 plants and instead of sacrificing my Primeval Titan. I talked a little bit about Radium Fountain already. There's not really much to it. Just gains life. Just gains life against Burn. If you lead on turn 1 Radium Fountain and then you bounce it and replay it on a couple of times, it gets very, very hard for them to win. And Radiant Fountain, just by itself, it's one of the main reasons why Burn is such a good matchup, because it means that if once we resolve the Primeval Titan, we are gaining some life immediately. You need to play around Skullcrack, and playing around Skullcrack, it's made much easier with Scout, because we can gain life at instant speed, so that's very, very nice too. Another feature of the Scout. Then we have Ghost Quarter, like I said earlier. It destroys Strawlands, it destroys Inkmoth Nexi, it destroys Raging Ravines and Treetop Villages, it destroys Celestial Colonnades, it destroys other Ghost Quarters and Field of Ruins when they are tapped. That's also very relevant. It's not great in terms of card advantage, but if you can destroy your opponent's tapped Field of Ruin or whatever, you can prevent them from destroying one of your actually relevant lands. So that's also something that does come up sometimes. And finally, we have our combo lands, okay, which are these two guys right here. We have Stronghold, which is the best one of both of them. It gives target creature plus super, vigilance or haste. This is what I explained at the very beginning, the interaction with Amulet, and we can, Primeval Titan itself can basically haste himself up and give us an attack and a trigger on the very turn it comes into play. It also it's great at making your smaller dudes into actual threats, because Scout goes from having 1 power to having 3 power. Basically Delver of Secrets. It's basically Delver, It makes for hasty ballistas. It makes for hasty Runic Thars, which is a funny thing to have, and it also helps Hornet Queen attack for more damage and then stay back to block as well, because it gives it vigilance. The vigilance is also very relevant sometimes. And then we have Sunhome. Now, this is a talk. This is a talk right here. Kessev Warfront is another card that has been tested and has been tried, and personally, I am not the biggest fan. However, I'm not saying that this land is bad. This land is actually very, very good in our deck. It's very, very good in our deck because it is, first of all, it boosts our small creatures' strength even past +2. So now our Tribe Scouts are gonna be swinging for 8 trample damage, which is huge. And our plant tokens now will have 4 power and trample, stuff like that. In that sense, it's very cool. Also, it is easier to activate because we have way more access to red mana than we do have access to white mana. Again, Boros Garrison is the only bounce land that we have that adds white mana, and Gemstone Mine is our only white source besides Boros Garrison. I guess barring Vesuva or whatever. And then what I do prefer about Sunhome is that Double Strike is just a very good ability, and I will explain why. First of all, if your opponent blocks with multiple dudes. This is particularly important against humans, spirits, decks where their creatures actually do get pretty big. Um, so if your opponent has like a 5/5 and a 4/4 champion of the parish, and they double block your primeval titan because you have lethal or whatever, then Kessid Wolfrun is basically a trade, right? You activate Kessid Wolfrun, you boost your primeval titan, and now you are trading your prime time and some mana for two of your opponent's champion of the parishes. Sunhome turns it into a champ block. Like, the difference between a champ block and a trade is insane. Same thing applies for Wurmcoil Engine and Death Touch creatures. Against those kind of creatures, Primeval Titan now it's basically forced them to champ block instead of just like straight up trading. Same thing with Death Shadow. Also, well, that's a whole nother topic because Death Shadow math is really complicated. But it's the same thing. You can first strike down the Death Shadow and then deal the rest of the trample damage to your opponent. Stuff like that. That's not to say that Kessid Wolfrun is bad. It's just different, and it's gonna be better against certain matchups, while it's gonna be worse against other matchups. Against control decks and stuff like that, making your colony token an 8 power dude, it's very, very important, and it's very, very good. Much better than give it just +2 so. But I personally do enjoy the fact that Sunhome turns those trades into champ blocks. Also, Sunhome enables the combo, which I have not talked about the whole actual Primeval Titan combo. So what you need is 2 Amulet of Vigors, and you need a Primeval Titan, okay? With multiple Amulets in play, now each one of your bounce lands, because of the ways that Amulet is worded, each one of your bounce lands now taps for 4 mana, okay? It's because you put the bounce land onto the stack first, the bounce land trigger, then you put the first Amulet trigger, then you put the second Amulet trigger. So you resolve the first Amulet trigger, and now you get priority to tap your land for mana. Then you have 2 mana floating from the bounce land, and now you resolve the second Amulet trigger, so the land then taps again, and now you can tap it again. So now you have 4 mana floating. Okay. With that in play, now when you cast your Primeval Titan, when you get Slayer Stronghold and Boros Garrison, again, if you order your triggers correctly, you can float 4 mana from the Garrison and have enough to activate Stronghold twice, making Titan 10 power. Okay, +2 so twice, +6, it's total 10. Then with the attack trigger, you can get Vesuva, copying the Boros Garrison, which will give you red-white mana, and then you can activate the Sunhome to give Primetime Double Strike, which will turn your 10 into 20. This is much easier to achieve with Sunhome Fortress of the Legion than with Kessid Wolfrun. So that's also something for you to think about. So in terms of our combo aspect, okay, in terms of our combo of the potential for the combo kill, Sunhome is better. In terms of grindy games, it's debatable, but it's possible that Kessid is better. Yeah. And this amulet, double amulet combo can only happen with double amulet, first of all, and second of all, unless you have like way too many land drops with Asuzas and Explorers, and it also works as early as turn 2 with Explore or Asuza in your hand. So you use turn 1, you play your amulet, you untap, turn 2, you play second amulet, and you play one of your bounce lands, you play Explore. You play one of your bounce lands, float 4 mana, use 2 of that mana to play Explore. You have an extra land drop, you go up to 6 mana, now you can cast your Primeval Titan, and you can make even more mana with Asuza. But it's not very likely, to be honest with you. I think on this stream, and trust me, I played a lot of Amulet on the streams, and I think that we've had like 4 turn 2 kills so far. Last one being on the last stream, and it was against blue-white, I think. My opponent tapped on turn 2 on the play. No, they helix my Asuza without doing the math, and it didn't go well for them. I think that covers all of our land. Oh, no, it does. It definitely does not. Vesuva. Vesuva is, it's everywhere you've ever been. Okay, Vesuva is an amazing land. It basically gives us whatever it is that we need. And you also need to plan your Vesuva plays when you, especially when you fetch it with Primetime. Because, for example, you can play Vesuva copying the bounce land just so you get some extra mana, and then you bounce the Vesuva itself and you replay it copying, your Slayer Stronghold or whatever. Or like Vesuva can copy, if you have Garrison and Stronghold in play, Vesuva can copy the Boros Garrison if you have an Amulet in play, and tap, give you red white, and then you replay it, copy Stronghold, and now you have, just the Vesuva gave you enough mana to achieve this little combo thingy. So Vesuva is a very interesting land. Now, something that's very important for you to know when you're playing with this, Vesuva. Yeah, Vesuva on Colonnade is very huge. Vesuva can not only copy your opponent's lands. I've used it plenty of times, like against Infect and stuff like that, to like copy my opponent's ink moths. You can block your ink moth with your own ink moth. I was able to do like at instant speed a couple of times. It feels really good. It feels really good. Your opponent does like the whole combo thing, and it's like, well, surprise blocker that plays around goes Bites of the Vascular because even though they have hexproof, it doesn't matter. So it's very interesting. You can have a lot of very interesting plays with Vesuva, copying your opponent's lands. And what I wanted to say is, when you fetch Vesuva with Primeval Titan, let's say that you're playing against Tron, and your Primeval Titan fetches Ghost Squatter Vesuva. Vesuva will not see Ghost Squatter as being already in play. Okay? Because both of them come into play at the same time with Primetime's ability. What that means is that Vesuva is not going to be able to copy that Ghost Squatter. Okay, so you need to watch out for that. However, what you can do is, when you bring those in, Vesuva copies the bounce land, is the trick that I explained earlier. You bounce the Vesuva itself, as in your second main, you replay the Vesuva copying Ghost Squatter this time if you have an extra land drop. So you can do that kind of thing on the... You can do that kind of tricks with Vesuva, which is very, very cool. Vesuva can copy your opponent's land, so when you're playing against a green deck, you can go ahead and you can consider it a green source when you look at your opening hand. Same thing with like fetch lands. You can copy fetch lands, and you can fetch for one of your forests, which is funny. All those kinds of play are enabled by Vesuva. However, and this is a funny thing. Sometimes you will find a hand that is just like, 2 bounce lands and the Vesuva, but the hand is excellent otherwise. You can still play the Vesuva, okay? You cannot play the bounce land because the bounce land will force you to bounce a land, and since your only land available is the bounce land itself, it will force you to bounce the bounce land, which won't get you anywhere basically, right? Unless you have an Amulet in play, that's not a play I recommend you do. However, Vesuva is it can be played. It's very funny how it works. It will come into play untapped, and it will literally do nothing. So you cannot tap it for mana. You can't do anything. But it still doesn't matter because, on your next turn you can play a Gruul Turf and you can bounce the Vesuva, and the second time around that you play it, you can copy something else. So it's not that big of a deal. But it makes sure that you can actually make your land drops, which, if you haven't noticed that, it's huge to make your land drops with this deck. A very good catch, my Bluebird. Yes, Vesuva is it will count as a basic. Whichever basic it is, if it comes into play before Blood Moon. This is a rule that they changed not so long ago. They changed it with the release of Ixalan. And basically, if there's no Blood Moon in play, Vesuva can come into play and copy either your opponent's basics, or it can copy your other basics, which is very relevant in the face of Blood Moon, especially because, like, for example, against Mardu Pyromancer or something like that, copying their basic Swamp or sometimes now they are playing the basic planes or copying their basic planes allows you to play explosives on 3, which allows you to play with a basic forest and on any one of your other mountains. It allows you to play explosives on 3, so you can blow up the Blood Moon. So that's actually a very relevant point. Why the 1/1 split for the Graveyard Hate? Leviathan, I haven't gotten yet to the sideboard. I'm finishing up the main deck real quick, and I will let you, and I will get in touch. Get in touch. I will explain to you on right now on stream. Yes, when they play a second run, it sucks, but it's still, if you have your first basic forest, you can fetch the Vesuva and copy your own basic, and that way you can actually have access to 4 basics instead of just the 3. So that part is relevant. Cool, man. I've been talking so much today. We talked about most of these things. Now we're gonna talk about the cantrips. This is an idea that was suggested by a Discord, a friend from the Discord, which is called Joseph Snyder. He was messing around with the idea of playing Adventurous Impulse, and then I was playing like most people. I was playing this kind of list, okay, where we have like 28 lands and like multiple explorers and stuff like that, and we have a 1 of Hornet Queen. And he suggested once that he was trying the card Adventurous Impulse in his deck, and he had been happy with it. So I was like, okay, let's try it. Might as well see what happens. Turns out I loved it. Having access, what we did is we cut the 28th land. This is now we're only playing 27 lands. We cut the 3rd Explorer from the list that I just showed you, and we cut the flex slot, which at that point was a Hornet Queen. That flex slot had been a Tireless Tracker before. It had been Ossinet Bailoff. It again meta dependent, and what it does is having access to extra cantrips. This is a concept that was created, but I can't remember who. And the concept is what is called Turbo Xerox. I think I'm dropping some frames right now. I think it's fine now. That was weird. I don't know what's going on. But the concept is called Turbo Xerox, okay? And you see this in Legacy a ton. You see this in Delver decks. You see this in Miracles decks. When you see a Miracles deck in Legacy, what you're looking at is a full-on control deck. Where is it? You have a full-on control deck that only plays 20 lands, which is insane, because like making land drops is the most important thing in your control deck. But it is because of your cantrips. Because your cantrips allow you to look at more at the top 3 cards, in this case. It allows you to dig through your deck quicker, giving you access to, like the best cards in the 3. So when you need a land, you can grab that land. When you need a creature, you can grab that creature instead. When you need ramp, you can impulse into Asuza or impulse into Scout. And I thought the concept was very interesting. We tried it out and I loved it. I think it's very, very cool. I think Adventurous Impulse really it smooths out the deck quite a bit, because even when it whiffs, unless you are, let's say that you're looking for a threat, unless you find you like Impulse through exactly Summoner's Pact, Impulse will either find you that threat that you're looking for, find you a land that will get you the threat that you're looking for, or it will put 3 blanks that you were going to draw in the bottom of your deck. So now it's like you basically drew 3 cards, because now there's 3 blanks that were on top of your deck that now are on the bottom, getting you closer to finding that threat or finding like that way to get a threat. So I have been super happy with it. Edgar saw the results on the stream and tried it out, and he basically made it into like the standard Amulet build nowadays. So It's a very cool concept that has been working out very nicely for me. Some people are not convinced by it. That's perfectly fine. That's the beauty of the deck. You can build it however the hell you want. And I right now I think that Impulse is not only the present but the future as well. I think this card is very good and it does what the deck wants to do. So Steerings, on the other hand, it's another cantrip. It cannot get Primeval Titans or Summoner's Pact. However, it can get any of our 27 lands. 3 of those lands, of course, mean that we are, transmitting these for Summoner's Pact. It can get Amulet. It can get Ballista and Explosives. And post-board, it can get the other explosives. It can get the Emrakul, which is actually a way to find a threat, and it can get both Relic and Tormod's Crypt. Steerings is amazing in the deck. You want 4, you would never run anything less than 4. This card in the early game is exactly what we want. A way to make our deck consistent. A way to hit our land drops. A way to hit our combo pieces in the matchups where we are trying to do that. And a way to hit our interaction in the matchups where we're trying to do that. So Steerings is insane. Yes, it whiffs. It whiffs. It's not rare at all for Steerings to whiff, considering that we have 33 hits and we have 27 whiffs. It happens sometimes. Yes, it sucks when it happens. Get over it. If your Steerings whiffs, just get over it and just win the match. Just try to get the next match. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But Steerings is excellent. I think that 3 is the go-to, 4 is the go-to, and it should be the go-to forever. Explore is a little bit different. Explore is in a very interesting spot. Explore does a little bit of 2 things that we want to be doing. A, playing lands, of course, ramping. That is exactly what we want to be doing. And it does so without costing us a card, which is also pretty good. It also digs a little bit deeper into the deck to try to find Primeval Titans or whatever. And in very rare scenarios, it's literally a combo enabler. Okay, it makes it more likely that we have the turn to kill that I explained earlier about. However, it is probably the worst card in the deck, and it's probably by a lot actually. But I have been liking the split between 3 impulses and 2 explorers. It's possible that but with playing only 27 lands, I don't think that the split is the other way around. But what it could be is that we should be playing 4 impulses and only 1 explore, or not even play explore at all and just play 4 impulses and maybe Hornet Queen or something like that in the main deck. Those are all possible scenarios. I have not tried them out yet because I kind of really like explorers still. It's just a very easy way of kind of developing your game plan. It's not the most efficient way. It's not that good of a way, but it's just a card that does something we want in a not so great but still okay way. I like it better than something like this, which is something that I have also tried in the past and I have not been very happy about really. Journey of Discovery. It's basically 3 mana Asuza. You can fetch for 2 basics, which it's nice against Blood Moon decks. I will grant that, but it's basically you're paying 3 mana for a 1-shot Asuza, and it's just it's just not great. It's just not great. If Spell Snare were an extremely widely played card, I would probably make a split, make 1 Explore, 1 Journey of Discovery or something. But since nobody plays Spell Snare except for Ryan Overturf, I think this is just okay. Okay, three more things to talk about. Pact of Negation. Excellent. As a one-off, this is what you want your one-offs to do. To be flexible, and when you randomly draw them against a deck where it's not good, it sucks. It sucks. But that's why we only have four one-offs. These are the only one-offs. They are insane one-off non-lands, I guess, right? Because, even one-off lands tap for mana, so that's still what we want to be doing. So that's not as bad. But one-offs that don't do... Leviathan, yeah, I was thinking of... That's exactly what I just said right now. You can say, I said Journey of Discovery. This is the other alternative. That's what Leviathan is talking about right now. Sky Shroud Ranger. This is basically Sakura Tribe Scout, except you can only do it at sorcery speed, which is much, much worse. But it's still like a card that we can use. In fact, I might actually try this out at some point. Just like flat out Cat Explorers and just like add one of this and one more Impulse. That's an idea I might try out at some point. Not today, but I might try it. So these are the four one-offs that we that are not lands. Already talked about Sage. Pact of Negation is insane in combo matchups. Having 0 mana counter target spell, it's huge. It's huge. It's just so good against decks like KCI, like Storm, even against Tron and stuff like that. If you're able to resolve your Primeval Titan, and then this Primeval Titan goes and fetches for Pact of Negation, that's basically closing the door right there. You're going to untap, you're gonna, whatever threat they have, it doesn't matter. You're just going to counter it, you're going to untap, pay for your pact, and kill your opponent. It's just amazing. And having it as a one-off is ridiculous. I could see not playing it, but that would mean that nobody plays KCI, nobody plays Tron, nobody plays Storm, and that's just not the world we live in. It's fine for it to be just a one-off in the sideboard. Even if I didn't play it main deck, I would still play it in the sideboard. Just because it's just so amazing whenever you want it. That it's definitely a card. It's definitely a card that I want to have access to. Then we have Walking Ballista. Walking Ballista is a very, very interesting card, and I think it's probably like the single best addition that the deck has seen in the past 2-3 years, 4 years, probably more. Wizards has not been very kind to the deck lately, and the only real card that we see played right now is Walking Ballista. I guess Abraid is pretty freaking sweet too, so Abraid is something. Walking Ballista, however, is an absolute house. This is, again, what I want my opponents to do. What I want my one-offs to do. When my opponent is playing a deck where Walking Ballista is good, this would be any kind of creature deck, especially small creature decks like Infect, Noble Hierarch decks, Devoted Druid decks. Against any of those decks, to meddling mage, yeah, it's huge against Band Spirits, meddling mage. Also, explosives also kills meddling mage. Walking Ballista is insane in those matchups. It's very, very, very good. We are a deck that is able to make a ton of mana. This is an innovation that Sam Black played at one GP. I can't remember which GP it was. It was a team GP, and he was playing Modern, and he was playing an early version of Amulet, I think, with like multiple trackers. It was pretty freaking sweet. But yeah, so we make a ton of mana, and we were able to play like a huge Ballista. I already talked about the interaction with Cavernous Souls against control, being able to have like a massive Ballista and just cast it for like 8 or something after we have like a million lands in play once we've resolved multiple Primeval Titans. Play an uncounterable Ballista, just ping them to death. Against, it kills Steel Overseer. There's just so many matchups where Ballista is insane. Also, an interaction that comes up often is it kills Eidolon without taking any damage. Because if you tap 4 mana for your Walking Ballista, that means that the converted mana cost is going to be 4 when it's on the stack. Meaning that Eidolon doesn't trigger, and then you can like block a Goblin Guide and then kill the Eidolon in combat. Netting you a bunch of mana, getting the Eidolon out of the... a bunch of life, I mean. Getting the Eidolon out of the board is decent in that spot too. So even when it's not great, it's still fine, you know? And, of course, we can tutor for it. When you can demonic tutor for it, these two cards, these three cards actually, four, 9 cards, I guess. Sorry, 7 cards. They do get much better. Same thing goes for Engineered Explosives. Explosives is a very, very funky card. Explosives has some very interesting interactions that I want to point out real quick. Number one, Thalia doesn't make explosives more expensive. It does, but the way Sunburst works is it only makes your it only counts the mana that you spent to cast it. Okay, so Thalia, it's making you spend 1 more mana for your non-creature spells. So what you do is you choose to play explosives X equals 1, but by paying 2 different colors of mana. So when you play explosives on 1, but when it comes into play, Sunburst only sees the colors that you spent, which were 2, even though you played explosives on 1. It's pretty weird, but it's a really funny interaction, and it destroys everything that it's non-land. So it destroys Stamping Sphere, it destroys creatures. We talked about Meddling Mage, Spell Queller, Lords. It's insane against Boggles. It just single-handedly, the fact that we play multiple explosives and that we have ways to tutor for it is why I haven't, like, the only time in the past 2 years that I remember losing to Boggles is because I didn't know they were siding in Damping Spheres, and I lost to not being able to pay for my Pact. This is right as soon as Damping Sphere was released, and I didn't know Boggles was playing it. It makes the Boggles matchups insane. You can for one mana and then 2 to crack it, you can blow up your opponent's entire board. It's very, very good, and it doesn't matter the size of the creatures. Death Shadow being a 9/9 doesn't matter. Tarmogoyf being 6/7, not relevant. You still kill them just the same. Engineered Explosives is really, really, really sweet. And being able to transmute for it is just huge in so many matchups. I have played explosives on 3 to kill Lilianas. I have played explosives on 4 to kill Jaces. I have played explosives on 5 to kill Teferis. You can. In fact, I kill. What was it? I played a mono black devotion deck the other day on stream, and I killed Fire Action Obliterator by making explosives on 4. It was it was sweet. It was sweet. And you have so many plays like that. You can play your explosives like in your main phase, and then you get lands with Primeval Titan, which give you enough mana to crack the explosives. Explosives is a very interesting card that allows for some very interesting play patterns. So you always should be thinking about explosives. Another interaction with explosives. Let's say there's a Chalice in play. If your opponent is smart, they will play Chalice on 0. That's when it gets us. And that's how you know when a player that's playing a Chalice deck, probably like Eldrazi Tron or something like that, those are the decks that play Chalice nowadays, if they know what they're doing, they will play explosives on 0. Crap. Yeah, I'm freezing, right? That's crappy. Well, hopefully it is fine now. It looks like I'm dropping frames. Unfortunately, I have no idea how to fix that, so I apologize for that. If your opponent is smart, they're gonna play explosives on 0, meaning that when you cast your explosives, it will get counter, right? Nope. You can cast explosives with X equals 1 by tapping one of your colorless lands. Okay, either one of these 5 lands plus Vesuva if it's copying one of these, or if if your opponent has a colorless land too. Each one of these will tap for colorless. What that means is that you're gonna be able to play Engineered Explosives with X equals 1, but it will come into play with Sunburst equals 0. Meaning that you can pay 2 and you can you can destroy your opponent's Chalice of the Void when cracking the explosives. It's a very very interesting card, and like the play patterns that we have, thanks to engineer explosives, we can we give ourselves outs in scenarios where it might seem that 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 there's nothing we can do about it. Uh, Leviathan, you would be you would be surprised, but I have a friend of mine that plays at my LGS, and he loves playing like Lantern artifact styles deck, KCI styles deck, and he's been playing the deck, the Astral Cornucopia deck, which puts counters on your different things. You have a card that you pay one and you tap it and you put counters on different things. And what he did is he played explosives for like 2, I think, and then started adding surge whatever counters it is on them. I don't even know. Charge counters. It brought it up to 6, and then he cracked explosives and killed my Primeval Titan. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. Yeah, Shauna. Yeah, it's a very sweet interaction. The one that Craig that kills to kill Chalice. It's very very cool. I think that pretty much covers the main deck. Again, when I finally finish that guide that I've been working on, some more things might come up that I write down over there. If there's any questions you have, please please let me know. You can let me know right now in chat if you're here. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Let me know on the Discord, any of that stuff. I always try to stay active, and I like answering any questions that you might have. Now, onto the sideboard. The sideboard is extremely customizable. And by extremely customizable, I think that you should build your sideboard to beat the metagame that you expect. Okay? This is what my sideboard is looking right now. No, that's not what I wanted to do. My color. This is what my sideboard is looking right now. And this kind of changes every week/month. Enter the Unknown. I have no idea what that card does. Oh, no, definitely not. Nope. Yeah, people talked about this. I forgot about this. When they printed this, people were talking about it a little bit. No, don't play this card. It's unplayable. You can only cast this card if you have a creature in play. Why would you ever want a ramp spell that you can't play reliably? No, this is awful. Yes, some people were talking about this, and I'm like, guys, no, just read the card. Target creature you control explores. That's, if you don't control a creature, you cannot explore. So that means that no is the answer. Same thing with this card. I was gonna talk about sideboard cards, so might as well get into this. Broken Bond. This looks like a card that you might want to play, and in fact, I would probably play this card if it said, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. That might make the card okay. As it is, I don't think this card is good at all. If your opponent doesn't have an artifact or enchantment in play, you simply cannot cast the card. Okay? And we are losing on that. We're not only losing on that, which is the extra value that we could have. We only get it if your opponent has a legal target, basically. So not only do you have an uncastable, but also you have a not flexible uncastable, because it's a sorcery, which means that it's not like Nature's Claim. Nature's Claim is an instant, so if your opponent plays a Blood Moon, even if you don't have a forest in play, you can float green mana, and then after the Blood Moon resolves, you can destroy it. Okay, which is nice. It is a good thing. And Rexage has the upside that it's suitable. So the first copy of Rexage is effectively the 5th copy of Rexage. Okay, so Broken Bond has neither of those advantages, and it has the disadvantage of not being castable if your opponent does not have a legal target. I don't think that card is good whatsoever. On the price value when there's like a Cavernous place, so basically, nope. Shona, I don't agree whatsoever. Explore. In fact, Explore is the complete opposite of that. You can cast Explore on turn 2, setting up to cast Asuza on turn 3 and make multiple land drops. You can cast Explore on turn 2, setting up so in next turn you can play Tracker and make a land drop immediately after to make sure that you get at least a clue out of it. No, Explore is it's good on an empty board. Explore is actually great on an empty board. This card does nothing on an empty board. I don't think they are even remotely similar. So yeah. Also, it's not card advantage. I mean, Explore isn't card advantage, but it replaces itself. Making your dudes explore does not replace itself. It just scries basically. So yeah, I would not recommend playing that card at all. I don't think it's good. Cool. Sideboard. Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce is... This is basically our counter magic package. In the past, yeah, Seal of Primordium used to be excellent because Seal of Primordium was the nuts against Splinter Twin. It's insane that Seal of Primordium, basically your twin opponent could not win. if you turn to cast Seal of Primordium, they just couldn't win, which is hilarious. So back when Splinter Twin was the deck, Seal of Primordium was the norm, yes. And I still think Seal of Primordium is pretty good. You can play it preemptively and throw it down and then just like forget about it, and then when your opponent has a target that you want to get rid of, you simply crack it for no mana investment anymore. So Seal of Primordium is a card that I think is fine. You can definitely play Seal of Primordium. For people wondering, this is Seal of Primordium. It's an enchantment. It costs 2 and you sacrifice and you destroy target artifact or enchantment. It has the upsides that I was talking about. You know, you can play it on an empty board. Memorial to Unity. That one I have not. I've never seen this card before. Oh. That's why. No. Yeah, I've seen this card. I don't think this card is very good. It's basically like Ancient Steerings in your mana base. If you wanted to play a card like this, what I would play is a card that I was going to talk about, which is this Mortuary Mire. I think this card is actually a very viable sideboard option. If you want to like play against like grindy style of decks, then this card is pretty good. Because the thing about this is, Shauna, it's if you're trying to find a prime time, this card is not really good, right? Because it's costing you not only 3 mana, but also your land drop. So it's putting you behind the land, and it's not even guaranteed to hit a Primeval Titan. And if you find a Summoner's Pact or something, you're also whiffing. Like 3 mana and a land drop to Impulse seems like something I'm not very interested in. If you want a card that will give you threats in the late game against grindy decks, this is what I would recommend. It basically means that each prime time that you resolve will put more prime times in the top of your deck, which is insane. This card is very good. In the appropriate metagames. I don't think right now it's a Mortuary Mire metagame, but it's definitely a card to have in your box of cards that could potentially be good in Amulet. All Amulet players have them, so you should have yours. And then this is a card that definitely goes there. So I was talking about Spell Pierce, counter magic. We used to play Swan Song in this slot. Okay, Swan Song targets enchantment, instant, or sorcery, and it gives your opponent a 2/2 creature. It counters Blood Moon, which is extremely relevant, and it's a hard counter for instants and sorceries. What changed that made us move to Spell Pierce? KCI became a deck, and both Jace the Mind Sculptor and Teferi were printed. I mean, Jace wasn't banned, and Teferi was printed. Spell Pierce being able to get either one of those it's just massive. Also against Strong, Spell Pierce, countering a Nugin or a Karn, it's huge. We can't counter those with Swan Song. And even sometimes the 2/2 token it's relevant. This version of the deck is not so combo centric. If you want to play a more combo centric version of Amulet, you can find this version right here. Okay, and you will see that this version, which is a version that's played by mostly, it was popularized by a Magic Online player named Punt Den One, which I streamed with once. His name is Nicolas Bruno. He's an amazing Amulet player, and he this is like his list. This is his baby. He built it from scratch, and the way that he builds this deck is way more combo centric. Okay, we're not only playing Primeval Titans, but we're playing Hive Minds, which combo with our pacts in order to make our opponents lose the game on their upkeep when they are not able to pay for their pact triggers. So this is a completely different deck. This deck doesn't play the mid-range game as well as this one. This version of the deck plays a mid-range more. It can play more of a mid-range game plan, and if we're going for the mid-range game plan, then the 2/2 token becomes actually relevant, and having access to Spell Pierce in those scenarios is just huge. This Spell Pierce can be changed for can be exchanged for other cards though. Negate is an option. Counter target a creature spell. It's a hard counter versus a soft counter. Personally, I think the difference between 1 and 2 mana is just massive. Holding up 1 mana is way easier for us while we are still developing our game plan than holding 2 mana, especially against decks like KCI, which kind of put pressure on us by just playing out things. So we kind of need to enact our game plan while we are still like holding up interaction for their game plan. It can be very tricky if we need to hold up 2 instead of just a single mana. However, card counter versus soft counter, that's a big difference. And this is a preference thing. Even another Amulet streamer called Davius Minimus, he likes this card, Guttural Response. For one green or red, in our case it's more often going to be green than red, of course. We counter target instant blue spell. This counters Cryptic Command, this spell, Remand, Gifts Ungiven, of Storm. However, it's much more narrow, so I'm personally not a big fan. I also like bringing in Spell Pierce against decks like Dredge and stuff like that, where just like countering a Cathartic Reunion can slow them down in a very huge way that will give us a very tempo positive play. But it's all a matter of what it is that you want to face, right? Negate is going to be better against specifically control decks because they're going to make more land drops and they're going to have actual mana to pay for Spell Pierce later in the game, and the game will go long. Against a combo deck, Spell Pierce is going to be better because they're going to try to combo you off on the early turns. The game is not going to go as long in general, so Spell Pierce is better there. It's up to what you expect to face in the end. As with anything, and I said this like a million times already, you should change your deck for the expected metagame that you think you will face. Leviathan, Academy Ruins. I think Lord Servant enjoys his memes a little bit too much, and I love him for it. I don't think that Academy Ruins is very good. I just think that it's very slow, and in the games where when we're supposed to make it to the late game when this card becomes good, it's just we are going to be already dead in most of the scenarios. He also loves Mindslayer, which I think is completely unplayable, but it's funny. But yeah, he just loves that build, and again, he can build his deck however he wants. It's awesome. That's the beauty of Amulet. It's extremely flexible. The idea behind Academy Ruins is that you can bring down Walking Ballista and Engineer Explosives in very specific scenarios. You can bring in Amulet. You can put Amulet on top as well. I don't think this is a very good play, but in some scenarios you might need to do that or whatever. That's fine. But yeah, recurring ballistas and explosives is kind of like the name of the game for what he's doing. And at that point, I personally think that Mortuary Mario is going to be better because it's going to be better in more contexts as well. So that's about Spell Pierce then. We talked about this right here. Graveyard Hate. Graveyard decks are at an all-time high in Modern right now. And you will see that I have a split between Relic of Progenitors and Tormod's Crypt. They kind of do the same thing, but they kind of don't. Against the decks where you want Tormod's Crypt, Dredge, KCI, Storm, Bridgebind, if that's still a deck, and that's about it. Against those 4 decks, Tormod's Crypt is miles better than Relic of Progenitors because of 2 things. First of all, the mana investment here is 2. 1 mana to play it, 1 mana to crack it. And not only that, it forces us to, for the rest of the game, after we play it, we need to be holding up 1 mana in order to crack it. That is not free, my friends. We are very often using all of our mana on every single turn, especially during the setup turns, which are when we want this effect the most against those decks. Tormod's Crypt has a mana investment of 0. Nothing. You just play it, you crack it whenever you want. This is huge. Against Storm and Dredge in particular, where the instant speed is very relevant. Second of all, I don't know if you did read the top right corner over there, that's a 0. What does a casting cost of 0 mean? We can transmute for it. Being able to transmute for instant speed graveyard interaction is very good in the current Modern metagame. I know that Scout can give you instant speed Bojuku Bogs. However, I do not think that playing a second Bojuku Bog is correct. In fact, I think that's just flat out wrong. I know that Bojuku Bog is nice because it gives you land drop and you get to replay it and whatever. We're just trying to buy time. We're trying to buy time. Against any of the decks that I just mentioned, we will win the late game. Against Dredge, we will win the late game. Against KCI, we will win the late game. Against Storm, it's debatable, but we will more often than not be winning the late game as well. So, you just need to buy time. You need to not die. That's the only thing that matters to us. And having instant speed interaction in 1 card versus having instant speed interaction with a combo, literally. I mean, we need 2 cards, we need an active Scout, and we need a Bojuku Bog, is huge. It's very important that we have instant speed interaction in those matchups. Same thing, because on turn 3, let's play that we play Lantern 1, we play Lantern 2, we play our 3rd line on turn 3, and we want to transmute. We play our land and we transmute for a Bojuku Bog. We already use our land drop, we die. Not good. Not good. However, we can transmute for Tormod's Crypt. Yes, good. Makes sense? They are different cards. They do different things. They have different purposes. They're not the same. Okay? So that's the idea behind Tormod's Crypt. On the other hand, it's Relic of Progenitors. Relic is much better. Relic is much better. I will get to your questions in a second, Leviathan. Relic is much better against black-green style decks. Jund, Bug, if that's even a deck. Black-green, Death Shadow decks, both Grixis and especially Traverse Shadow. It's pretty good against control decks as well. It's pretty good against... basically against all the grindier kind of decks. Not the combo decks, but the grindier kind of decks. You will still bring it in against Dredge and you will be somewhat happy about it. And sometimes it will do nothing against Dredge. But it is way more flexible and it comes in way more matchups, but it's way worse in the matchups where you really want this kind of effect. So they are different cards. If you were to not play a Relic and you were to play only a single piece of graveyard hit, which I think in the current meta you should play one extra piece of graveyard hit in your sideboard. I don't think that just a single Bojuka Bog is enough. You definitely need a second one. If you were to play just a single one, I wholeheartedly recommend you make it a Tormod script because of the advantages that I explained earlier. If you want to play two, if you want to, if just like the card disadvantage is just too much for you to handle or something like that, you can play a second relic. That's fine. You can do whatever you want. Personally, I like the split. I like the split quite a bit, and I think this is right now the way to go about it. Questions. What matchups do we not board out Explore? Against any kind of mid-range matchups, Explore doesn't come up. Any kind decks like Tron, for example, you want to make your deck as lean and as possible, so you will take out all the chaff, basically, meaning like the Walking Ballista, the explosives, the Bojuka Bog. You will take out the cards that are not really great, and you will bring in like maybe Counter Magic or Braids or whatever, and then you leave Explore scene because you want to be as consistent as you possibly can. And against that kind of deck, basically, the idea why Explore comes comes out so often, it's because Explore, it's a medium thing to be doing in the early game. Okay, Explore is a medium thing to be doing. It's never gonna be awesome. It's except when we are turn 2 comboing. It's never gonna be awesome, but it is always gonna be above average. Post board, we're gonna be using our early turns in order to leave up interaction. Either creatures to kill, spells to counter, or creatures to kill. We're gonna be bringing in this kind of effects, meaning that our turn 2 will not be free anymore. Okay, and our turn 2 on the main deck, it's usually pretty free. We're not doing much unless we already we played an Amulet on turn 1, and on turn 2 we can play Asuza or something, which means that the Explorer is like a pretty nice medium card to be playing on turn 2 in order to develop your plan, not fall too far behind, in fact try to get ahead if possible, and not and we're not doing that post board. We're turning more into a little bit of a control deck, with a little bit of interaction and whatnot. So that's why Explore oftentimes comes out right there. However, in the decks where we want to keep progressing, against decks where we want to keep progressing our game plan, or when we side out Amulets, for example, when we side out Amulets, Explore becomes much better because now our ramp package is way more limited, and we really want to see at least 1 or 2 ramp cards for every match that we side out Amulets. So that makes it so Explore will likely stay in. It's also not. It's basically a redraw in the late game. It's just a cantrip. So it's not as dead as probably an Amulet on turn 10 against blue-white, And the other question is about Engineered Explosives. Engineered Explosives comes in against humans, spirits, merfolk. People still play that deck for some reason. Comes in against Boggles. Comes in against... I simply don't take it out, I guess, against Burn. It does come in against stuff like 8-Whack or something, aggro decks that have very even, very 1 or 2 centric converted mana cost. It comes in against Jund and Black-Green X style of decks. Okoto, how you doing? We're doing well. We're finishing up today's stream with which was basically me talking about Amulet for 2.5 hours, so it was a great stream. So Engineered Explosives comes in all of those matchups. Try to think off the top of my head if there's anything I'm missing. It's interaction against Infect, so it does come in as well. Oh, Mardu Pyromancer, in order to kill all of those tokens. It also kills... if we're lucky, it kills Blood Moon. If it also kills a young Pyromancer, so it has a lot of flexibility there. Death and Taxes for sure. Any kind of mid-range of creature mid-range / combo deck. So any Devoted Druid decks, it comes in. It's specific. It's particularly insane in the Todd Stevens deck. What's his name? Value Town. Green White Value Town. explosives is amazing in that matchup. Against Storm, I don't bring in the second one. Against Storm, I simply do not bring out the first, because it's fine, but it's extremely slow. I just leave in the first as a potential answer for a transmutable answer, I guess, for empty the Warren's tokens. But I don't think it's just too slow to kill like their mana dudes. It's like it force mana 4 mana to kill their 2 mana dude and like tap me out so they are able to kill me. It's just not what I want to be doing. I want to be upgrading their stuff at instant speed. This is just trades 2 mana for 2 mana, nice and even, no problems there. So that's why the second engineered explosives is in the sideboard. It's also an extremely flexible card that you can bring in against decks like random decks like the enchantment deck. People will sometimes like 8 rack. Against 8 rack, it's very good because all of their ways to kill you are 1 mana and mutable. So against all of those like random junky decks, Engineered Explosives is very often randomly very very good. What is your overall plan against Hollow One? To be honest with you, the game plan against Hollow One is a Braid, Obstinate Veloth, and Tireless Tracker. And I have been trying bringing in Fire Spout because my experience has been that I die to their go wide plan way more often than I die to their go big plan. Okay, they have 2 plans that they enact. They have the go wide with Bloodghasts, Phoenixes, the stupid 1/2 menace guy that I can't remember the name, Flameblood Adept. I think that's it. So they go wide with those threats, or they go big with Hollow Ones, Stassigers, and Gourmet Ganglers. When I do lose to that on that matchup, which is actually quite often, I do lose to the go wide plan way more than I do lose to the go big plan. Bojuka Bog is very very good in that matchup. It slows them down considerably. Rex Sage is also very good. The name of the game is survive the early game, as it's usually the name of the game against control decks. So like Colony Garden and Radium Fountain are the lands that you want to see in your opening hand. And the second part of the deck, the second part of the plan is pray that they don't have Burning Inquiry. Burning Inquiry wrecks us. And I don't know if this is just me being unlucky, but every single time my opponent casts a Burning Inquiry, I die. It just wrecks me completely. It's insane. They discard all of my lands if I'm looking for lands, or they discard all my threats when I'm looking for threats. It's insane. You can watch every single match on YouTube that I've played against Hollow One. I get wrecked by Burning Inquiry. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think that matchup is very good, because they are so flexible in their game plan, and we can really only fight on one axis. We're not really good at fighting on both axes, like something like Blue White. Blue White has like Terminus, and they have Path to Exiles, so they own Hollow One. But we don't have that flexibility, so like either our sweepers are good or our like dismembers and stuff are good, but it's just bad. The only thing that I found is that Hornet Queen is not good because their go wide plan is the one that we lose to, and all of their go wide creatures are recurable. So at one point it will buy you 1 or 2 turns, and then you will die to their Phoenixes. Your Hornet tokens will start chomping their Bloodghasts and Phoenixes, and you will just die. So Baloth is pretty good though. I do like Baloth. Yeah, so that's the idea against Hollow One. And speaking of Hollow One, Upgrade. This is a card. Yeah, haha, trick. It's my experience is not great against Hollow One in particular. So we have a Braid also. A Braid is one of it's literally the newest card that was added to this deck, which is from Amonkhet. Braid is amazing because of the printing of Damping Sphere. Before Braid, we used to play Dismember. In fact, Dismember is still very good in a wide variety of matchups, like in something like Death against Death Shadow, against Jund, against Hollow One. against the creature decks that I was talking about, the creature combo decks like Devoted Druid combo, and against spirits, against all of those decks, I would rather have Dismember because the 1 mana is such a big difference when it comes to the second mana. However, the printing of Damping Sphere, which is not a card that we have talked about yet. This is a card, guys. This is a card. This is very beatable. It's very beatable. However, oh, my Bluebird, yeah, it's actually from Out of Devastation. However, this card is very good against us. It's very good against us. Both clauses are actually extremely relevant. The first one is particularly relevant because we do rely quite a bit on our bounce lands to fix our colors. Okay, so without our bounce lands tapping for colored mana, we only have Gemstone Mine as a way to cast our red spells, meaning Abrade, and we only have this right here. We only have 9 sources to cast our green spells. So Damping Sphere really hoses us. The second clause is also very important because now it means that our Summoner's Pact effectively costs mana, or we need to be casting this Summoner's Pact on like our opponent's turn, so we pay in our upkeep and we then set up for even the following turn. It really messes the math up for us in a very big way. So you wanna be aware of Damping Sphere, especially if you suspect that your opponent is a deck that might play it. When you finally resolve the Primeval Titan, let's say that you pacted for it or something, make sure you try playing around Damping Sphere, because so you might end up fetching a suboptimal pair of lands with the Primeval Titan trigger, but it's very important for you not to die to your own pack trigger when you have resolved the Primeval Titan. You know, once you resolve the Primeval Titan, you're very likely to win. So make sure that you don't throw away that win by like losing to this stupid card. So it's definitely a card that we should be aware of. However, this card very beatable. This card not so beatable. This is our kryptonite, you guys. This is the end all be all. This card hoses us hard. We cannot cast our spells when this card is in play, and if we cannot cast our spells, we lose the game. It's pretty straightforward. So it's not great. So the current version of the deck, it kind of has a single answer in the Rex Sage and then a couple of spell pierces on the sideboard. So it kind of like, you know, if you get paired against a Bloodmoon Day, you can just like let it go, you move on, and you get ready for the next match. You can Rex Sage does a lot of work though. Rex Sage does do a lot of work, so it's possible that you can beat it because of Rex Sage specifically, but it's not pretty. It's not pretty. This card really gets us. Oyuri, thank you very much for that follow. Shauna, yeah, that is a perfectly fine configuration. I think you're gonna be a little bit slower, and you're gonna lose like both Relic and Tracker and awfully bad cards against both spirits. I guess not awfully bad, but they are pretty bad cards against spirits and humans. So if you get paired against either of those decks, you're gonna be very sad, and your deck is gonna be probably just like straight up worse than this version with the 2 Explorers. But if you really dislike Explore, what I will try out is +1 Sky Shroud Ranger, which is basically, as I talked a little bit about earlier, and it's like a 5th Sacred Drive Scout. One of those and the 4th Impulse. That's probably what my next stream is gonna be testing. Try it out, see how that feels. Cool. So that's the reason why we're running Abrade instead of Dismember. Although it is pretty in the humans matchup, Abrade is probably better than Dismember since it kills most of the things that we want to kill, mainly Melee Mage, and it doesn't cost life, which can be very relevant against the aggro deck. I did already talk about the creatures. I did talk about these three. I talked a little bit about Emrakul. Emrakul is nice, as I said earlier, against blue-white in particular, and against any control deck. Also, this actually happened. My through the reach blue-red reach opponent resolved a Blood Moon, and then I had already resolved the Prime Time by then, but they managed to deal with the Prime Time, and then they resolved a Blood Moon there. I had 10 lands in play, or 9 lands or something, and I hardcast Emrakul. I did win that game. I did win that game. I wasted their Through the Reach. I think I minus their Jace or something. I can't remember. Or I like bounced their Jace with a Cryptic. I can't remember what I did, but I won that game. I won that game for sure. And then finally we have Firespout. Firespout is our sweeper of choice, mainly because it's the easier one to cast with our mana base. If we had access to a million red sources, we would play Anger of the Gods in a heartbeat. No questions there. I think Anger is insane right now. I think it's very, very good. Against Dredge, against Hollow One, against all of those like recursive decks, against Bridgevine, against all of those decks, Anger is the nuts. However, double red is very hard to achieve for us. And as I was saying earlier, we want to be casting these sweeper effects in the early game, meaning that Anger is just not gonna be reliably castable on turns 3 and 4. And finally, the other option is this, Radiant Flames. However, this is Converge. This X damages creature with X in another color spent to cast Radiant Flame. So it's basically the same as Engineered Explosives with Sunbirds. It's definitely kind of like the same effect. The same mechanic, I mean. However, we're often going to be... on turn 2, it is very often that we will be casting our sweepers for like blue... like a green, red, for example. If we have like a Gruul Turf and a Radium Fountain, we can cast Firespout for 2 damage, but we can only cast Radiant Flames for 3 damage, but we can only cast Radiant Flames for just 2 damage. Or we are going to be casting Flames with like Forest, Turf, or like it's something like that, or Bojuki Bog, you know? I guess Bojuki Bog would work, but... Or we have like Forest, Colony Garden, and like Gemstone Mine. And that way we can cast Firespout for 3, but Flames only for 2. And right now, the way that Modern is shaped, that third point of toughness is very, very, very relevant. The third point of toughness means you can kill Mantis Rider, you can kill Spellqueller, you can kill Meddling Mage even after it's been buffed by a Thalia's Lieutenant. You can kill Price Amalgams. You can kill Price Amalgams. It's actually very, very relevant. Like that third point of toughness is huge. Vengevine. That third point of toughness is actually massive. So that's why right now I'm even... Dropping frames again. Waiting until it gets fixed. Man, I wish I knew how to fix this. Like, I really have no idea. Alright, it seems like we're good again. That third point of toughness is very, very important. And again, we want to reliably be able to cast our sweepers on turn 2. The other alternative, this I think it's very good in certain matchups, Kozilek's Return. 3 mana, only a single red needed, instant speed 2 damage. I think this is excellent. I think this is an excellent card. However, as I was just explaining, in the current Modern metagame, I do think that the third point of toughness is more relevant than the instant speed. And that's literally the exchange that we're doing. That second ability will not come up, and if it does come up, it's going to be completely irrelevant. You know, because Emrakul can actually trigger the second ability. That's not a thing. Don't think about that and let that influence your decision whatsoever. What you should be talking about is it better to 2 damage instant speed, or is it better to 3 damage sorcery speed? And I think in the current modern meta, Fire Spout and the 3 damage are better than Cosmic Return and the 2 damage instant speed. Cosmic Return is going to be better against specifically Infect, Affinity, and Hardened Scales. And Fire Spout is going to be better against humans, against Dredge, against Vergebind, against Hollow One. I guess the instant speed is going to be better too. Against Spirits, which are a wider representation of the metagame, I think. And even against the decks where K-Return is excellent, Fire Spout will be fine. However, K-Return is excellent, so that's kind of like the trade-off that you're making. Yeah, question in the chat, Slaughter Pact. Slaughter Pact. For people wondering, is this card. This card is very, very good. And I did play quite a bit with Slaughter Pact in my deck. I do think that this card it's excellent. It's a very fine sideboard card. In fact, when people ask me for a replacement for the second Engineered Explosives, there's no replacement for the first one. But if you want to replace the second Engineered Explosives, what I usually say is Slaughter Pact, because it's a removal spell that you can transmute for, which is pretty huge, because it means that your Primeval Titan actually gets a removal spell now. So this is truly excellent in some matchups, like against Meddling Mage in humans, against Infect. Against those kind of matchups, Slaughter Pact is excellent. However, Slaughter Pact doesn't kill Gourmet Angler, it doesn't kill Death Shadow, and it doesn't kill Bob. Those are the 3 very relevant ones that Slaughter Pact doesn't kill. So yeah, that's kind of the issue with it. Also, if you want to run Slaughter Pact, you need to change the mana base somehow, because having a removal spell that you can only effectively cast, right? I mean, you can cast it for 0, but you will die on your upkeep unless you have one of these 5 lands already in play. Seems a little bit too risky for me. So I would at least be playing at least one of the black, the green black bounce land, Golgari, which is this one, Golgari Rot Farm. I would either be playing some of this or Mortuary Mire, like we showed earlier. Mortuary Mire, this card. So you want more lands that tap for black mana, basically. So that is what you're looking for. But yeah, Slaughter Pact is very playable. And again, I said this a million times, I'll say it one more time. This is a very flexible deck. When people say Amulet is a combo deck, it annoys me. This is the most non-linear deck in the format, basically. We are trying to do the same every game, which is resolve the Primeval Titan. The way to get there is vastly different. Every single game, in every single matchup, after every single opponent that you play. Even your opponent might sideboard indifferently with the same deck, and the way that we get there is going to be different. It's very flexible. It's extremely complex. Not in the way of that it's hard to play. You know, like something like KCI, for example. KCI is very hard to play. I'm gonna figure combo. Stop the trolls, man. You're killing me here. But this is just very challenging in terms of it doesn't play Magic the same way that any other deck plays Magic. You know, like the same way that Dredge plays Magic like no other deck? Like the way that the play patterns work with Dredge are something that doesn't get repeated with any other deck? Here we have the same, okay? There's gonna be situations where you will lose the game. You will flat out lose the game because you played your Glue Turf instead of holding it in hand. You will lose the game because you return the worst land to your hand of the Gruul Turf trigger. you will lose the game because you like played Tolera West on turn 1 instead of playing Gemstone Mine. That's what's weird about the deck. That's what's challenging, and that's what's hard about the deck. A lot of people make these mistakes that are easy to fix once you understand how the deck works. But this deck works like no other deck in Modern. It's extremely unique in that sense, and that's what makes it weird, and that's what makes it hard. But once you figure out the play patterns, once you figure out your outs, once you know what your deck looks like, once you know what it is that you're looking for, what cards you're trying to draw in order to get you out of whatever situation, then the deck becomes much easier, okay? However, you will find that a lot of times there's 3 pretty good lines that will get you like 60% win rate, and there's like a 4th very convoluted line that will get you a 75% win rate, you know. And those are the nice games, you know, when you're going to be able to leverage your skill and your knowledge of the deck once you're able to see these very convoluted lines that, again, this line might probably happen on turn 4, but you should have seen this line on turn 2. Does that make sense? You didn't see the line on turn 2, and you lost the game on a game that you should have won on turn 4 because you didn't play for that line. That is what makes the deck weird and challenging. But that's also what makes the deck so rewarding, and I have a lot of decks. I do enjoy playing Magic a lot, and I do have a lot of decks built. Not only in paper, but not only Magic Online, but also in paper. And I've played a lot of decks. I played probably every single deck in Modern I have played, with the exception of KCI. KCI is the only deck that I have not actually played. And I guess the Phoenix deck that came out now, I haven't played that one either. I played every single other Modern deck in the format, and I just keep coming back to Amulet. It's amazing. I just keep coming back to Amulet because there's no other deck that is so rewarding, so much fun, so entertaining. It makes me think. It makes me like understand the board state. It makes me do this. It makes me think on a completely different level that no other deck does. And that's why I think this deck is awesome. I love it with a passion. And this is why I am writing out this guide that I'm expecting to release probably like in 3 months or so. I checked right now, I'm 56 pages in, and I am not even close to being done. This next month, however, what I will do is I will release a sideboard guide, but not like the sideboard guide that you see in like Star City Games or Channel Fireball articles, which is like bring this in, bring this out, bring this in, bring this out. I hate that kind of stuff because my list changes every freaking week. So minus X this, minus plus X this doesn't help me whatsoever because it's completely changing all the time. Because I want to try new things and because new decks happen to show up in the meta. So what I did is I'm writing an in-depth, I don't want to call it sideboard guide, I call it the matchup guide, okay? I looked at the top, I basically grabbed MTG Goldfish and I started going down, writing down every single matchup, and I'm writing an in-depth description of the relevant cards in the matchup, how you need to approach it, what's important and what you need to like not pay attention to. And I will probably be down, I already finished aggro decks and control decks, and now I'm going through combo decks. It's taking a long time. So I'm not going to I'm not going to promise anything. White Faces, thank you very much for the follow. Yeah, I'm trying to make it nice, you know. France 57, if you're looking for the deck list, that's the one that you're looking for. So yeah, I will of course share this on Twitter, on like Discord. I will share this everywhere, so don't worry about it. If you follow me anywhere in social media or anything, you will know when I finish this, and you will have access to this. So don't worry about it. It's just taking me way longer than I was expecting because I didn't realize that. Damn, deck is hard, man. The deck is once I really started thinking about it and really like going deep, I realized it's one of those things that until you just sit down and like start talking about it, you don't realize you know so much about something. You know, it's very interesting. But yes, so I will let you guys know when I finish that. Oh right, the Facebook group. Yes, I can post it on the Facebook group. If you want to join the Discord, you can do it with that link right there. I will. If you want to join the Discord, you can do it with that game. If you want to follow me on Twitter, that's my handle right there at FabulosMTG. So thank you, Remisen, for for putting in all the actual commands. Thank you very much. Um, and yeah, so we will be back. This week is Thanksgiving, so we'll be out of town. But I will be back next week, and I'm going to try the -2 Explorer +1 Impulse +1 Sky Shroud Ranger list. We'll see how that goes. And yes, if you guys are not following the channel yet, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to hit that follow button. If you want to actually help support the channel, you can subscribe, and you can get this fun and awesome primetime emote, which you can actually use not only on this channel but on any channel on Twitch. So if you want to be using your primetime emote on other people's channels, you can do so with the subscription. If you want to again follow me on Twitter, this is the handle. If you want to check previous streams, that's the link to my YouTube channel. Make sure you go over there and you subscribe. You can get notified whenever I post anything new. This guide that I just made will of course go to the YouTube channel, so if you have any questions and you watch this on YouTube, make sure that you leave a comment with your question, and I will make sure that I answer it. Sorry. And if you want to further support the channel, you can donate with that link over there. Any donation of $12 which or more, which basically it's meant to pay for the entry fee of any league, will make it so I play any deck that you want on stream. If you want to see something that's not Amulet, if you want to see some like weird non-conventional Amulet list with some spice or whatever that you have been testing or that you think would be fun, with any donations I will play that on stream. And then of course after the league we will talk about what we liked, talk about what we didn't like, etc. If you have any questions, make sure you reach me out also on Discord. And yeah, hope you have an amazing and very happy Thanksgiving. And I hope to see you guys next Monday, when I will come back with some Amulet, but with actual gameplay instead of this. Yes, you can, my Bluebird. You can do that with this link. Let me figure it out. Sub, is that? Yeah, there you go. If you go to that link, you can actually subscribe to the channel. Amulet Bloom. To be honest with you, friends, I am not very well versed on the Amulet Bloom list. Thank you for the follow, by the way. I am not very well versed on the Amulet Bloom list. What I was thinking of doing though, we already did this once. I had Punt and Wine on stream with me, and we actually talked about like all of the possible lines, talked about sideboarding, talked about all of that stuff. So I will actually talk to Punt, which is the actual creator of the deck, and we will try to figure out. We've been talking about this, trying to get another stream where he actually joins me live, and if anybody has any questions, you can ask him. I am honestly not as qualified to talk about this deck as I am to talk about this, because I have like 1,000+ matches with this deck, and I have like 20 with the other one, 20 or 30, so it's definitely not the same. I can play it for fun, but I don't think I will be able to do like an in-depth talk like I just did about the Amulet Impulse deck. You will have to talk to Punt about that one, or Austin Collins. I think no, it's not Collins. Austin Robbins, that's his name. Um, he also streams from time to time, and if you want to convince him to do an in-depth guide like I just did, then by all means, make sure you get in love with him. Get in love. We get in touch. Man, I'm just tired already. Been talking too much. To get in touch with him and ask him if he can do the same on his stream as well. I think this kind of information is just not out there. So I just wanted to make sure to make. Damn, it's been almost 3 hours. There's a lot to talk about this deck. So that's why I always get so mad whenever I see like, all you need to know about Amulet in 8 minutes, and it's just like, well, no. I didn't even talk about all you need to know about Amulet, and I just talked non-stop for 3 hours almost. So this deck is very, very deep, and there's a lot of play to this. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys join me again on Monday when we will actually be playing this through some leagues and see how we do. Make sure to check all my other content on YouTube and whatnot, and I will see you soon. Happy Thanksgiving, and yeah, hope to see you soon. Bye bye.